Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Shikamaru and Shino are protective of Naruto. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by DarthGumdrop and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto Uzumaki, a short blonde boy with bright smiling blue eyes and a horrendously orange jumpsuit, was fidgeting in his seat. The class was almost over for the day, and he couldn't sit still any longer. Iruka-sensei was going over the information for the Jonin exam that would take place the following day. Naruto was hoping to be able to pull off his plan without any problems. The past two exams had ended badly for various reasons. His first one, 2 years ago now, he had begged Iruka for weeks to be allowed to enter the exam early. Naruto had been hoping that he would be able to get just the right mix of average and just below, with a couple of obvious advanced areas to graduate without much attention being brought. That hadn't been the case. He had bombed the written test far too much, and his Taijutsu was too lenient for the teachers to allow him to pass on kunai and shuriken accuracy alone. The clone jutsu was what really got him though. He hadn't expected them to insist on only 3 clones. When the boy practiced on his own, as no one would be willing to help him anyway, he always made at least 10 clones. He knew they weren't exactly the academy standard ones, but they worked well enough. His version only had one hand sign too, but that hadn't been allowed in the exam, and so the boy utterly failed his first graduation test. That was alright though, he had reasoned at the time. He now knew what to expect from it the next time around, but his karma was apparently still as black as it could be. Iruka hadn't been on the team of teachers conducting the exam the next year. There was 1 kunoichi and 2 shinobi, all of whom made their disdain of the boy quite clear in the first few seconds after he walked in the door. The glares he had received made him flinch, despite having dealt with similar things all his life. He had slunk to the back and tried to be as invisible as possible. It hadn't worked. He had been called first to do all of the demonstrations in front of the entire class. Naruto had paled and tried to make sure his hands weren't sweaty. He always had more trouble with the seals when he was nervous or his hands were wet. It hadn't made a difference in the end. The boy could feel all eyes on him, something he couldn't stand. Even after his attempts to get over his fear with his many pranks and being openly called out for them, he still felt his chakra and nerves fluctuating wildly with unease. He remembered thinking he wished he could be swallowed up into the floor as he stood and failed his ninjutsu test. That exam day had been the worst day at school he could recall. The entire day, he was the target of all the teachers' ill will. The kunai he was given were tampered with and the shuriken bent. His test looked different than the others and he was pitted against the Taijutsu prodigy Rock Lee in his spar. Understandably, he had failed miserably again. And now at what the 3rd year he had entered these exams. This entire year had been horrible. Bullies and teasing were only the tip of the iceberg. Life outside of school had also taken a turn for the worse. His little apartment had long been his haven, a somewhat safe place away from all the glares and insults. On the days he had to go out in the village, being hit with rocks and rotten food, he would always hurry home to curl up in his futon and look through his worn set of books and scrolls and pretend the outside world didn't exist. This was one of the only reasons he was capable of doing much better at school than he showed. Gigi had taken time out of his busy schedule to teach the little blonde to read and write when he was 5 or so. The extensive set of scrolls had mysteriously shown up on his kitchen counter a few weeks before he started the academy when he was 7. Basics like history, math, geography and chakra paths were supplemented with more advanced scrolls on ninjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu and even a few on the art of sealing. The lonely boy had devoured all of them, and to his confusion, more kept appearing as time went on. He had a box of over 70 scrolls and books now after 5 years of collecting them. He had read and studied and trained to the best of his ability when other children would have been off playing or spending time with family. Naruto never gave it much thought though. He had never been exposed to those things, and their lack was nearly unnoticed. He did notice the sudden increase of violent activity recently. Before, he would be yelled at and thrown out of stores often, but never had people actively come after him. In the last year he had been chased or attacked at least once a week. His speed and stamina had increased drastically out of necessity. He could only find so many places to hide after all. His home too was now a target. Spray-painted words and threats were all over the walls when he came home from class and his things would disappear. His precious books had been saved only because he kept them in flat boxes beneath the floorboards. Naruto had trouble sleeping, fearing that he would be caught unprepared. He also avoided the markets and stores even more than usual now. These 2 things, lack of sleep and food, contributed heavily to his current fidgety state. He was watching the clock, tuning out Iruka-sensei's voice and the murmurs of the other children. Minutes before he would be free, a sharp pain radiated suddenly from his forehead. He blinked, and heard the piece of chalk clatter to his desk. Sniggers and taunts of dead last and typical moron filled the room. Iruka was glaring at him, hands on hips. Naruto! This is important. Are you listening now? There it was, the only person other than Gigi who would actually try to help him. Iruka's glares were not harsh and demeaning like all the others. The scarred teacher just wanted him to learn and do him best. Sorry, sensei, thought the boy with true regret. You probably won't ever see my best. Naruto was very fond of Iruka, and it was sad that the blonde was hiding things from him. But it had to be done. The boy grinned, closing his eyes, and rubbed the red spot on his forehead. Haha. Of course I was listening, Iruka-sensei. I am totally gonna graduate this time, believe it, he said loudly. Iruka just nodded wearily. Now then, tomorrow at 8, we will begin the exam. Please be on time, or even early. He glanced at the clock. Dismissed, see you all tomorrow. The mad rush of small bodies to get out the door was loud, covering the nearly silent escape of one orange-clad boy out the closest window. Naruto leapt from roof to roof, safely above the heads of temperamental villagers. Thanks God. I can go home now, and study. Maybe I can even afford to go to Ichiraku's tomorrow. He entered his apartment through the small window, and quickly set up a trap in it. His door was already laced with 4 different traps in case anyone tried to get in. They didn't always keep people out, but they helped. The boy was eternally grateful to whomever was gifting him with all his books. The book on traps and snares was a very recent addition. He flopped on his futon, and carefully pulled up the boards near his feet. His box of Taijutsu scrolls was pulled out, and he began to reread the second-level ones for tomorrow. He drifted off to sleep like that after hours of reading. Light was filtering in from the rising sun when the boy jerked awake. His damaged clock read 6:20. He sighed in relief. Plenty of time to shower and get everything in order. The water was cold, so his shower was brief. Naruto grabbed one of this non-orange outfits to wear today. He only had 3, and he wore them very rarely. Today he chose a muted blue t-shirt, a mesh long-sleeve undershirt, brown pants and black sandals. He wore his gray weapons pouch and a sleeveless brown hoodie with a subtle orange and black spiral on the back. He took time to cook a few vegetables and some eggs from his meager supply, and went on to carefully rebind the handles of his kunai and sharpen each one of his shuriken and saban. He then moved on to his meditation. This the Hokage had suggested to him after last year's exam. Naruto didn't meditate every day, as it was difficult for him to calm his mind and put himself at risk by being relaxed, but it did help him when he managed it. If he ever really needed to be calm, it was today. So the boy sat on his futon and closed his eyes. He sat cross-legged with his hands on his knees. Breath in, and count 1, 2, 3. Then exhale. Breath in. By the time his alarm went off at 7:45, Naruto was almost asleep. He stretched slowly and reluctantly headed out. The morning was fairly quiet, even near the academy. He dropped down to the street behind a building adjacent to the academy, and slowly made his way to the entrance. He wasn't really noticed, as he walked in with a few of his classmates. He shuffled into the room and sat in the middle of the back row, the perfect place to observe others, while going unnoticed. He took a moment to look around and noticed a small table set up off to the side of Iruka's desk. It had 3 chairs, a pitcher of water and 3 glasses on it. Before he could get too curious, Iruka walked in with 3 older men Naruto had never seen at the academy before. They stood chatting quietly until all the genin hopefuls were seated. Iruka turned and clapped twice to quiet the class. Alright, now, as I mentioned yesterday, this year's exam will be a bit different from before. Naruto's gut wrenched at that. No, what if my plan won't function in this situation? I planned it so well, but with an unknown thrown in dash. Iruka kept talking and the blonde forced himself to listen attentively. These 3 shinobi will be observing all parts of will be the ones to organize the teams after graduation. They will be analyzing your skills and weaknesses so you can be placed on a team that will function well. I'll introduce them now. All 3 were intimidating. The first was a tall man wearing a black trench coat and bandana. His face was scarred diagonally. This is Ibiki Marino, he is a special Jonin. The second man was a tad bit shorter, with dark hair pulled back in a bushy ponytail, Jonin vest and tan hide vest over a mesh shirt. Iruka gestured to the man. This is Shikamaru Nara, the Jonin commander. The third man was by far the least scary, to Naruto anyway. He was blonde, with light blue-green eyes and wore a red haori over the standard Jonin vest and a simple black outfit. Inoichi Yamanaka is a member of the intelligence division. Iruka smiled and bowed slightly to the 3 as they walked over to the table. Naruto was nearly shaking by now. He had heard of Inoichi and Shikaku before. They were both parents of classmates. Ino was bright and confident in herself, and she looked remarkably like her father. Naruto had often heard her telling another girl called Sakura things about psychology and observation she learned from her dad. Shikamaru and Nara was nearly a carbon copy of Shikaku, down to their facial expressions and mannerisms. Naruto knew that the Nara clan was hailed as a clan of geniuses, so that meant Shikaku was likely even smarter than Shika. God must hate me for this to happen. How can I even hope to make it, with them watching me? The boy could feel his hands shaking at the thought of being scrutinized by any one of the powerful, intimidating Jonin. Iruka cleared his throat over the few murmur that had broken out. Ahem, I will be handing out papers for the test, do not turn them over yet. There were a few seconds of quiet shuffling. Naruto stared at his desk, not wanting to be forced to see the doom that had befallen him. He knew that this would one of the last chances he would have to graduate. Any longer, and he might be dropped from the academy. I have to. Somehow, I just have to make it work. Maybe I can just stick to the plan? They will probably be more concerned with the clan kids anyway. Hinata and Sasuke and Kiba especially. They might just overlook a nobody like me. Why yeah, that might be right. A paper was slid across his desk. The blonde glanced up to see Iruka smiling at him. Good luck, he whispered. Naruto forced a grin back. Once all the tests had been passed out, Iruka called start. Naruto quickly studied the 15-question test. He could have easily answered all of them, but for his plan to work, he had to have a fairly consistent lower level. Taking a closer look, he saw a mixture of 5 different types of questions, in sets of easy, moderate, and difficult. He chose 2 difficult ones to answer, and the rest of the difficulty he would be wrong. Then he answered 4 of the moderate ones correctly, failing the last one. He answered all the easy ones. That should give me a score of about 60 or 70. Not awful, but far from good. He sat back satisfied, glancing up to see how much time he'd spent. He winced. Only 10 minutes. He leaned back over his paper and pretended to be working still. I can't be too fast, that would give it away. He rolled his shoulders and tried to ignore the feeling of eyes on him for the remaining 20 minutes. Inoichi and Shikamaru met with Ibiki the night before the academy graduation test to go over their plans. The 3 Jonin were all rather pleased that the Hokage was allowing more detail and thought to go into genin team placement this year. The older 2 had a vested interest as their heirs were taking the test. Ibiki was to be the impartial one to balance the others. So, what do you think we should look for? The Yamanaka inquired. Shikamaru slowly sipped his tea before answering. I would expect to see the clan children being capable in their various family skills, but the civilians might be more imbalanced skill-wise. What I would be looking for would be complementary strengths and weaknesses. But primarily, personality matches. The blonde man nodded slowly. He knew much of the success of his old genin team had been the close bonds the 3 of them shared. Ino Shikicho was famous to this day for its impeccable teamwork. Ibiki spoke up next. We should assess their personal weaknesses and strengths as well as their interaction with the rest of the class. They sat together for another half hour to work out who was looking for what before going their separate ways. They met again the next morning and walked to the academy together. They started their observation as soon as they walked in the door. Shikamaru and Choji were sitting close together by a window. Ino and a pink-haired girl were on either side of the dark-haired Uchiha boy. Kiba Inuzuka sat in the center of the room with a few civilian children. The shy Hyuga heiress was near Kiba, but not a part of the group. Shino Aburame was in the back row, rather distinctly alone. The only other occupant of the back row was a blonde boy dressed in brown. Inoichi began tagging the more vocal students. Ino, Sakura, Kiba and Shikamaru were probably the most vocal. Sasuke and Shino were nearly silent, but likely highly capable. Choji and Hinata were good-natured and kind, but unpopular. The civilians were mostly fairly moderate. They were in a situation and part of the world that they were not raised to deal with, and would struggle with parts of the ninja world. The blonde boy in the back though, he caught the Yamanaka's attention. His posture and clothing suggested that he was more comfortable than civilians with shinobi culture, but the tense way he held his body, and his position away from the others didn't fit. He glanced at Ibiki to see him scanning the group of preteens. Shikamaru nudged him and shot a glance at the blonde. Iruka introduced them, and they took their places at the table. Inoichi leaned over to his old friend. You noticed the blonde kid? What do you think? Ibiki chimed in from his other side to answer Inoichi. He and the Hyuga girl stuck out to me, along with the Aburame boy. Shikamaru frowned a bit. The blonde, is he Naruto Uzumaki? He should be in this class, I think. Not what I expected from the boy. Around town he is loud and makes trouble. Ibiki watched the children flip their papers and scramble to write. The 3 he noted were watched especially closely. The Hyuga girl flushed and clumsily fussed with her pencil at first but then quickly focused on the work, only pausing between questions slightly. The Aburame boy had no emotion as he worked through it, not even pausing. The blonde Uzumaki, he reminded himself, was very interesting. The boy scanned the page, then looked at it again more closely. The interrogator noted the observant looks his 2 companions gave the boy. He bit at his lip and closed his eyes. Nervous habit, thinking? And then he quickly started to answer the questions in the oddest way. He appeared to skip the top bit of the paper in favor of a spot almost halfway down, only to skip to the bottom and then back to the top. He did this with a look of concern and frustration on his face. The entire paper was completed this way, and in a very short amount of time. Shikamaru was the only other child who was finished. Ibiki watched a flash of shock and sudden fear cross the boy's face, and he ducked down to move his pencil over the completed paper. The Jonin could tell he wasn't exerting enough pressure on the pencil to mark the paper. Interesting. I'll want to see how good his grade is. He went back to watching the rest of the class, lot of fools, and made more discoveries. The pink-haired civilian thought she was smart and very capable, but obviously lacked the backbone that a ninja would require. Sasuke Uchiha was much the same in a way. The dark-eyed boy was arrogant, and relied on his family name and the massacre for much of his position. The Inuzuka brat was wild and unruly, but he also focused wholly on the given task, a good skill once cultivated a bit. Ino Yamanaka watched him as much as he watched her. The brave little blonde would turn her head to see their table in the corner of her eye while doing her test. She is confident, but also seems aware of herself and her abilities. He wondered what his fellow observers would say in the few minutes they had between parts of the exam. Chapter 3. Naruto fake doodled until the bell rang to signal the end of their time. He could hardly hold in his sigh of relief. He had almost screwed up. He had no idea if he had really been feeling eyes on him the whole time, or if that was just his paranoia speaking. Iruka gathered up the tests, and sat at his desk to grade them. Nervous murmurs could be heard in the quiet that followed. Naruto rested his head on the desktop. God, help me make it through today without too much trouble. A loud squawk from a chair had him glancing up to see his teacher standing. Okay, Haruno, 100%, Uchiha, 100%, Nara 100%, Hyuga 99%, Aburame 98%, Yamanaka 96%, Inuzuka 85%, Akimichi 85%, Uzumaki 76%. You all score 2 to 3 points in the tests. Now he filed through all the tests announcing the scores. Only 2 students had failed this time. Iruka was pleased. Even Kiba and Naruto had done fair enough to pass, as long as they did well in the other tests. Naruto was pleased with his grade, just enough above the halfway mark to give him points on this section. He would try to get a similar balance out of the other parts of the test. Iruka smiled at his class. We will have a 10-minute break, then head outside for the Kanai and Taijutsu tests. Chatter instantly roared to life. The 3 Jonin rose and walked over to the desk. Naruto was slightly worried when he noted them going through the tests. If they had watched him carefully enough, his pattern might be noticeable. He slumped him his chair and hopped. Nothing would be noticed. Shikamaru picked up the test he was most interested in and scanned it quickly. Neat, yet childish handwriting named its writer as Naruto Uzumaki. He focused on the same places the boy had first skipped to and noticed they were all advanced questions. The second pattern were the moderate and last the easy questions. He also noted that there was a pattern of correct and incorrect answers. Ibiki and Inoichi examined the paper with him. Ibiki was the first to comment. The boy did it on purpose, rigged his test. Inoichi nodded absently, mind racing to reason out the boy's actions. Shikamaru huffed. He planned very carefully, spreading out his mistakes between all 3 difficulties, and he got just enough right to score his 2 points. What is he doing, I wonder? Inoichi frowned. Did you see him freak when he noticed he had finished so early? He looked afraid. Why? And his posture and actions contradict. The interrogator nodded. He dresses like a ninja, but has discomfort different than the civilians. He was tense, like he expected an attack. Shikamaru fingered the incriminating paper. Maybe he rigged the test so he could go unnoticed. He sat in the back and dressed in very plain cloths. In fact, his position is perfect to watch everyone else without being noticed himself. Ibiki smirked at Shikamaru's thought. Smart brat. But one of us will have to put a stop to it. The others glanced at him, waiting for an explanation. We cannot judge his skill accuracy with him hiding it. Inoichi sighed, running a hand through his long hair. You're right. But I don't think it would be a good idea to directly confront him. The boy looks defensive, and if someone comes at him with accusations, he'll likely react badly. Ibiki huffed. Kids were troublesome at best. So delicate and naive. Shikamaru leaned back against the desk. What if we announce that anyone caught rigging any part of the test will automatically fail? The boy would likely just hold back even more. The youngest Jonin pointed out. I think it would be best to catch him before they start, and intimidate him into actually trying. Inoichi shrugged. Tricky, but it might be the best option. We have to be quick about it. There are only 5 minutes left. Ibiki glanced about, and noted the boy still sitting in the back row. I'll see to it. You 2 can go out and watch the rest. Shikamaru and the Yamanaka quietly slipped out the door and left the interrogator to his task. Naruto was resting in his seat, hoping that he could get his nerves settled before he had to go out and perform again. Footsteps in the suddenly silent room startled him. He glanced up to see the tall, dark-clothed man stalking up to him. The rest of the room was empty. Naruto felt his blood run cold. What did I do? What if he's like others after me? No, this can't be happening. Ibiki could see the boy tense, and his breathing speed up. He purposely loomed over the seated boy and stared down at him. Well, boy, wouldn't you like to know your rigged test was excellently done? Naruto paled even more at the sharp, predatory grin flashed at him. Most shinobi wouldn't lie and cheat their fellow ninja, would they? Do you want to know what will happen to you if you do such a thing again? The blonde felt clammy and panicked. They knew, and obviously the 3 Jonin were not happy with his deception. He barely managed to shake his head in response to Ibiki's question. The Jonin leaned closer, invading the boy's personal space. I won't tolerate it. If I find you've been manipulating these tests again, well, the village will just be 1 Jonin student down. By now Naruto was panting, almost to pass out. Ibiki judged him scared enough to obey. Plus, he was nearly out of time. You will be truthful and accurate from now on, got it? Gee, got it. Naruto squeaked out, jerking back against his chair for more distance. The Jonin stalked away without another word, leaving the youth shaking and feeling ill. Outside, lines of targets had been set up at various distances from a rope line. The students were milling about, chattering in small clusters. Naruto slipped out just before Iruka called them to line up. The blonde was painfully aware of the three Jonin watching from the sidelines. What am I supposed to do? Marino-san said. I can't? Everyone will be after me then. Like the first days of school. The boy was still shivering, now wishing he had just not come at all today. Repeating the academy again would be a pleasure compared to what he felt right now. His promise to the Hokage was the only thing keeping him there. I told him I would pass, and become a ninja. He could be proud of thinking of the old man who had cared for him, been kind to him, forced some much-needed resolve into him. He joined his classmates in the line, and did his best to ignore the shaking of his hands and the feeling of eyes on him. For Gigi, I'll try. He swallowed hard and waited for his turn. Naruto was second to last. Only Shikamaru was behind him. He watched the others, and forced his breathing to be steady. He occupied his mind with attentively watching each person's throws. Hinata was the first to surprise him with her 8 out of 10 in kunai and shuriken. He had expected Sasuke to get an almost perfect score, and for Sakura to only get half. The civilian children had varying degrees of success. Ino, Choji and Kiba had good scores. He gulped after Kiba stepped back. It was his turn. Naruto stepped forward and accepted the 10 kunai Iruka handed him. Iruka's smile steadied him enough for the blonde to weigh and balance the throwing knives. I can do this. Ignore everyone else. Pretend this is practice out in the woods. He flipped the kunai around to hold 4 in his hand. He stepped up to the line and flicked his wrist before he could think too much. For thunks, he didn't look to see the targets. He held the next 3 kunai by their blades and threw again. The last 3 he threw a second after the other 3. He finally looked up and almost cringed at the 10 bull's eyes he had scored. Iruka and the rest of his classmates were stunned. The loser, always screws up idiot, had scored a perfect 10. The tan teacher coughed. Well, very good, Naruto. He handed over a stack of shuriken. Naruto closed his eyes and picked them up. These he threw in 2 sets of 5, with the same results as before. Iruka was truly stunned by now. He couldn't help watching his favorite student with bewildered pride. He knew Naruto was playing clown to some extent, but he never would have guessed that the loud blonde was so capable. After marking down the scores, and shooting a glance at the 3 Jonin to see pleased, and suspiciously not shocked faces, he asked the blonde if he had anything else to show for this part of the test. He always asked, even though none of the student ever willingly did more work than necessary. Is there anything else you want to demonstrate? Naruto glanced quickly over to Ibiki and the others before slowly nodding. I guess so? Iruka blinked and then hurriedly gestured to the rope line. Go on, have at it, Naruto. Naruto wiped sweaty hands on his brown pants and pulled out a bundle of saban. He counted out 10, then with a flick of his wrist, launched them. He didn't have to check this time. Saban were his best projectile weapons. Ibiki shared a surprised glance with Shikaku. Inoichi just frowned and quietly commented. Didn't his form look very much like a Jonin on all 3 of those? And what genin learned to use saban? Naruto quickly accepted his saban back and shuffled off to the side. Shikamaru took his place, and lazily scored a 9 out of 10. Iruka was still trying to reason out Naruto's sudden display of skill as he totaled the scores and announced points. He called the first names of his students out of habit, to distract it to follow the usual exam protocol. Sakura 1, Sasuke 2, Shino 3, Choji 2, Ino 2, Hinata 3, Kiba 2, Naruto 3. There were murmurs of disappointment from several, and no one could really miss Sasuke's glare. Naruto shrunk back and stuck closer to Shikamaru, who just yawned and blinked tiredly. Now, we have arranged pairs for the Taijutsu matches. You will each get 2 chances, even if you lose the first match. It will be a 2-minute match, or elimination if you are pushed or thrown out of the boundary. The first match is Kiba versus Ino. Kiba loudly protested having to fight a girl, saying he couldn't be expected to fight a weak thing like Ino. Iruka hushed him and the match started. Neither one really made much headway, as Kiba was reluctant to attack the girl and she was less offensive. Iruka called the match after the 2 minutes were up. He would have the Jonin score all the matches. Next were 2 civilians, both boys, who ended up wrestling out of the ring. Shino fought Shikamaru. Shino won by pushing the other boy out of the ring. Hinata versus Sakura, and Hinata closed most of the other girls' chakra points, and was then able to simply wait out the time limit. Choji fought Sakura and knocked the girl out of the ring just as the match ended. Naruto was called to fight Sasuke. Why me? What did I ever do? He mumbled as he took a fighting stance. The Jonin were still watching. There would be no way for him to pull anything, and honestly, he wasn't sure Iruka would accept it if he did. The boy was stuck, forced into performing at his full ability. He wasn't really sure how he would fare, as he never really practiced against real people. Yes, he was quick, but he knew the Uchiha was also very good at Taijutsu. And what would happen in the event that he won? He was a nobody, against a clan heir. He didn't stand a chance of going unnoticed if he won. The village held the Uchiha clan, or what was left of it, in such high regard, and so did the teachers here. Surely he would be failed for some made-up offense? He bit his lip, and peeked up at his opponent. Sasuke was glaring at him still as they stood waiting. Iruka called start, and Sasuke instantly leapt forward to strike at Naruto's shoulder. The blonde easily ducked under the kick and reached out to jab at the other's lower leg. His blow hit, but it didn't even faze the rookie. Naruto rounded and followed up his jab with a sweeping kick that forced the Uchiha to dodge. Naruto pressed on, keeping the other boy moving. Sasuke was getting angry now, being shown up by the class clown. He growled and twisted to the left to get behind the blonde boy. He stuck out a foot and kicked Naruto in the gut. The younger boy was able to curl away from the blow slightly, but he still gasped out and staggered slightly. Sasuke smirked viciously and tried to press back. Naruto recovered in seconds though. He scowled at the look he got from the other. Using the moves and form from his scrolls, Naruto lowered his body slightly, curling his arms close to his body. He lashed out in a series of lightning-fast jabs and kicks. Most found their marks, shoulders, elbow and knee joints. Naruto could tell his plan was almost finished. Sasuke was moving more stiffly and with a distinct lack of the grace he had displayed at first. Going for the joints was making them lock slightly each time a hit connected. It should only take a little more. The blonde put on a burst of speed, sensing the end of the match coming. His fists and feet connected with Sasuke's elbows and his right knee, and suddenly the dark-haired boy collapsed sideways. Iruka called the match as Naruto stepped away. The teacher was aghast again. He had almost gotten so caught up in the fluid, dance-like battle that he forgot to end it. Naruto, who had looked ready to bolt when entering the ring, had systematically locked most of the other boys' joints. Iruka hadn't seen an academy student this advanced since Rock Lee. Naruto was not nearly as specialized as the odd boy, but clearly he was far beyond the academy basics, or even first-level genin styles. There was silence, stifling and complete as the number one unpredictable ninja quietly walked away. Iruka and Mizuki, his assistant for the exam, helped Sasuke up. The Uchiha boy was murderously glaring at his opponent. His knee and both arms refused to move still, and he could feel bruises forming around the places the blonde had hit him. Iruka let Mizuki help the boy over to a bench, where he was sat next to Sakura, who, despite having her chakra points blocked, bounced eagerly in her seat. Sasuke turned his harsh stare on her, but she giggled and scooted so close their shoulders touched. Sasuke snarled at her to no effect. With Mizuki tending to the 2 out of commission students, Iruka went on to pair up the rest for their second matches. Every one of the genin hopefuls watched Naruto with mixtures of awe, shock and curiosity. Naruto was pale again, and hiding his shaking hands in his pockets. He just knew this would be the end of him. He had beaten and humiliated the Uchiha prodigy, the rookie of the year. The girls would be out for his blood for being mean to their Sasuke-kun and the villagers. Heaven forbid they hear about this. He wouldn't be surprised if his apartment was torched. Nope, he was just dead. He hoped he could at least talk to Gigi about this before anything happened. Naruto? He jerked and looked up at Iruka with wide, dilated blue eyes. His Iruka-sensei tensed and sucked in a breath, seeing the abject fear and panic in his student's face. Then Iruka smiled, hiding the abrupt worry he couldn't help but feel for the boy. It's your turn again, he offered gently. The boy blinked, swallowing hard before turning and seeing Choji standing in the ring waiting. Choji, at least he won't hate me that I beat him. He's nice enough, I hope. He walked over, breathing slowly and trying not to think of all the things that were doubtlessly going to go wrong for him in the very near future. He forced his mind to focus, blocking out the fearful whispers and the crawling sensation of eyes watching him. Choji nodded at him when he took his position opposite. The genial demeanor of the rotund boy eased Naruto's anxiety marginally. It was just enough for him to carefully defeat the other boy without embarrassing him. It took only half of the allotted time for Naruto to force Choji out of the ring. Iruka called the match and dismissed the class for a half-hour break in which the scores for this section would be counted up. Most of the children flocked together in small groups. Glances at each other and whispered recounts of everything made Naruto even more ill at ease. He was nearly twitching with nerves by now. He felt shaky and lightheaded. He was overcome with gratitude when Iruka touched his shoulder and turned him to look up at the man. Hey, you want to go in for a bit? He offered. Naruto nodded. The hand on his shoulder gently pushed him towards the door. It was a welcome warmth. Sasuke's story. Sasuke Uchiha, one of the last Uchiha in the village hidden in the leaves, and in the world at large, was pissed. He, Rookie of the Year, had been showed up by the moron Uzumaki, twice, in the academy graduation exam yesterday. He could still hardly believe the way he had been bested in their spar. He, not that dolt, was the one who had extra training every day, who drilled each jutsu and kata every day. He had a brother to tutor him, when Itachi had time anyway. It made no sense for that peasant to have beaten him at anything. Sasuke was genuinely, royally furious. The peasant had never done well at any part of the academy before. Why now? Sasuke had to wonder if the dumb blonde had cheated, although, with all those Jonin watching the exam, it wasn't likely. And now he had stayed up most of the night, stewing in anger. Sasuke huffed and kicked moodily at his bed sheets. The sun was starting to come up by now. Itachi was home, for once, so Sasuke would have breakfast with him soon. Then it would be back to the academy, for the last time. Thank God. The Uchiha boy stood and went about his routine, shower first, then dressing in some of his cloths, all of course hand-embroidered with the Uchiha fan, and then gathering up his weapons. Finally feeling slightly more balanced, from the familiar actions and added to with visions of Naruto being stuck with Sakura and Choji as teammates, Sasuke left his room. The halls were quiet, as they always were, ever since no, just always quiet. He ignored the portraits up on the wall with ease from long days of practice. The kitchen door was open, and Sasuke could just see his brother moving around. Sasuke, good morning. Of course, Itachi would notice him immediately. He was the head of the Uchiha family, and a Jonin. Itachi was undisputedly one of the greatest ninja in Konoha. Sasuke just hummed in reply, sitting at the low table. Itachi, dressed in casual yukata, joined him moments later. Sasuke ignored the twinge of pain when he noted how huge the table seemed with just the two of them. He started eating after a murmured itadakimasu. Steamed fish, miso soup, white rice, and rolled omelets were set before him. You received your Hitaite, I see. Itachi spoke after a few minutes passed. Sasuke shrugged. I'm the rookie of the year. I couldn't possibly have failed. The teachers at the academy couldn't bear to fail the last of the Uchiha. He sniffed disdainfully. They did pass that peasant Uzumaki. Itachi frowned, thinking of the letter he had received late last night. Sasuke continued eating without noticing his brother's change in attitude. I will be here all day, so once you are finished with the team assignments and such, come on back. I'll teach you something new. Sasuke light up. Okay, I'll be back as soon as I can, and Ai-san. Itachi smiled slightly back. Sasuke stood up and cleared his dishes and then left the kitchen. Itachi heard the front door close a few minutes later. The ex-ANBU captain pulled out the letter from an inner pocket. Letter of recommended treatment of Isu's the man's side. He knew Sasuke would be very upset, but he had to agree with the statements and recommendations in the letter. He only hoped that it wasn't too much at once. Sasuke might pretend to be strong and unshakable, but he was far more vulnerable than he realized. Sasuke ignored all the dummies in the classroom after glaring at Naruto and took his usual seat. He thought over who had graduated. Who would be on his team? He would, of course, be placed with the other students that did at least marginally better than the rest of the rabble. Kiba, he was loud, but capable. One of the civilian boys, Kenji Jin, was about the next candidate least likely to hold Sasuke back. He would be a genin, a real ninja after today. He could finally get Itachi to teach him some of the more serious jutsu and kata that he'd been desiring for years now. Sasuke smirked thinly. He'd grow more powerful now, till no one could best him. He mostly tuned out the first several teams that were listed. Iruka's voice was easy to ignore by now. He sat up once he heard his own name, only to be furious second later. Choji the fatty, and someone named Haku. The hell? There had to be a mistake. He was the last Uchiha, clan heir and a highly skilled rookie. No way he could be teamed up with a lame-ass loser like Choji. And he knew that Yuhi Kurenai was a woman. His brother had mentioned the Kunoichi once. No way. Sasuke Uchiha would not be placed on a dead-end team with a weak, obese teammate, and a stupid female as a sensei. He's take this up with Itachi and the Hokage as soon as possible. He sat, rigid with fury. People trickled out, and when a woman with long, wild black hair and wearing red and white strode in, he knew that she was Yuhi Kurenai, and at first he made no move to stand. She surveyed the room, and Sasuke momentarily felt his breath catch when he saw her eyes. They were almost blood red, with a darker ring of color in them. He quickly shook away the similarity to the Sharingan, and reluctantly stood up. Choji was already standing next to her. The woman smiled slightly at him when he stopped in front of her. Good, let's go then. She turned and led the pair out. She didn't seem to notice Sasuke's cold look or Choji's nervous shifting. Sasuke was trying to just be patient. He would get things fixed soon. One complaint from him, and he would have a new team by this time tomorrow. He followed the woman out to training ground 6. Kurenai sat on the grass and gestured to the two boys. All right. She smiled at them. I would like us all to introduce ourselves. Choji shifted before asking a question. Yohi-sensei, don't we have a third teammate? Haku, right? Kurenai nodded. Yes, Yuki Haku. She turned towards the trees and made a come here gesture. A figure slowly crept out from the patch of trees. Sasuke scowled when the person came into view. She wore a teal haori with white trim over a brown long-sleeved shirt and matching brown hakama. Her hair was dark brown and pulled back into a bun covered in white fabric. 2 locks of hair framed her face, clasped at the ends with small silver pieces. Her fingernails were painted green. Altogether, Sasuke thought she was very pretty, far more so than Ino and Sakura. The girl seemed shy too. This made Sasuke scowl. A timid, pretty girl would be next to useless in combat. What the hell was the Hokage doing? Setting up a team with 2 delicate females was just. Haku sat down, a little farther away from Choji and Sasuke. Choji smiled at them and then turned his attention back to their sensei. Now that we're all here, I'll start with introductions. I am Yuhi Kurenai. You can call me Kurenai. I am a Jonin. I graduated the academy at age 9 and made Chunin at 13. I like to read books, practice genjutsu and study flower language. My dreams would be to be a successful Jonin and eventually marry and start a family. She turned to look at Choji next. The boy blushed slightly and started eating a bag of potato chips. Well, Munch, I'm a Kimichi Choji. I'm 12, the heir of my clan. I like to eat and hang out with Shikamaru Crunch Munch. I hope to be able to be a dependable teammate and become a Jonin someday. He kept of eating, looking over at Sasuke. Sasuke was frowning, again, still, he wasn't sure. He was far from impressed. A fatty who had next to no ambition and a weak woman. He would have to show them he was different, superior to them. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I am the sole heir to my clan. I have very few likes. I will become the strongest, and take revenge on those that destroyed my clan by decimating them. He kept his posture reserved and ignored the looks he got from Choji and Kurenai. Next was Haku. Their voice was soft. I'm Yuki Haku. I am the last survivor of my clan and family. I come from the land of water. I traveled for several years as a missing nin with Mamachi Zabuza. I enjoy studying medicine and anatomy. I wish to become a man who can stand beside Zabuza-san and be equally strong. Choji and Sasuke stared at him oddly. Why you a man who? Huh? Choji spluttered, saving Sasuke from doing so. Kurenai chuckled. Haku is a boy. He came to Konoha a few months ago with his teacher, who was a notorious missing nin. He is actually closer to Chunin than Genin, but the Hokage thought it would be good for him to transition to life as a Konoha shinobi in a Genin team. Sasuke was done, just damn well done with today. First he gets a woman as a teacher, then a stupid idiot as a teammate. This weird androgynous jerk was the last straw. The Uchiha stood up and turned to glare balefully at the three still seated. This team is a joke. I refuse to be held back like this. He stormed off, not listening to Kurenai when she called him back. He returned home, slipping in through his window, rather than the front door. He wasn't going to see Itachi just yet. First he had to get his head straight. He paced, muttering curses and insults under his breath. This was how Itachi found him 10 minutes later. The Jonin had heard his brother come back, a good 2 hours early. He'd suspected the reason lay in his team assignment. Itachi knocked lightly on the door before entering Sasuke's room. Ototo, is something wrong? Sasuke whirled, his anger getting the better of his minimal patience. Yes. Do you know who they put me with? He went on without waiting for an answer. A weak woman for a sensei, and 2 losers. They will do nothing but keep me from my ambitions. I won't stand for this. You will have to come with me to get the Hokage to fix this idiotic mistake. This is totally unbefitting to the last of the Uchiha clan. His rant brought a frown and a disappointed sigh to his brother. Itachi had hope, with little expectation, that Sasuke would react better than this. He hadn't even told him the worst part of his team. Itachi sat down on the bed and motioned for Sasuke to sit next to him. I need you to listen to me, Sasuke. He was usually serious, but something in the way he said that made Sasuke freeze. He slowly sat down and faced his brother. I know you aren't going to like to hear this, but I need you to listen. He said again. Ever since the attack, Sasuke flinched. You have been acting well very poorly. Sasuke took a breath to complain. No, I know you deserved some leeway at first, but you changed for the worse, Sasuke. You ignore everyone and everything you deem lesser than yourself, and you view yourself as higher than all others. You think that as an Uchiha, you deserve more respect and power than others. This is false. Sasuke scowled. Itachi reached out to poke his forehead gently. I know you are somewhat talented, but you should look at yourself objectively. You aren't the best, and you will have to work hard to gain strength. You can't rely on our Kekkei Genkai and family name to get you power. Itachi sighed heavily. I received a letter from the Hokage that held details of your graduation. It is heavily suggested for you to see a therapist. What? No. I don't need. Sasuke burst out furious. Itachi glared at him, shocking the boy. His brother was one of the most gentle and calm people he knew. I know your feelings. I am the one who asked you to see one before. This isn't up for discussion this time. Your position as a genin is conditional. Sasuke sat back, shocked. What? Conditional? He couldn't believe this. He was an Uchiha. This wasn't supposed to happen to him. You have to be able to treat your teammates and sensei with respect, work with them and become a strong team unit. Itachi gently informed. He didn't want to hurt his baby brother, but he couldn't let his behavior stay this way. You will have a monthly evaluation from Inoichi Yamanaka with Kurenai-san. If you can't adjust your behavior and assimilate into the team, you will be pulled from the ninja ranks. Sasuke just stared, speechless at Itachi. Itachi stood and poked his brother again. I'll be downstairs in the study. Think about this. Be honest and examine yourself. This is serious, Sasuke. You won't get another chance if you make a mistake this time. You are destroying yourself like this. Please, for me, don't do this. He left. In Iruka's small office, Naruto was perched on the chair with a cup of tea and a small plate of cookies. Iruka was sitting next to him, angled so they were facing each other. The boy was very still and silent, 2 things Iruka had never thought to describe him as. If he hadn't seen the look on his face after his first match, the scarred Chunin would have thought he imagined it. Naruto? He waited for him to look up from the teacup. Are you alright? Naruto just sipped his tea for a long moment. And maybe? No, not really, he choked out. Even more concerned, Iruka leaned over to touch his forehead. His skin was clammy and cold. Are you sick? Should I take you to the hospital? Naruto just shook his head and stared at his feet. What's the matter then? You can tell me, you know. You have my word as a former prankster, I won't tell. He tried to bring a smile to his student with the last remark. That was how he got Naruto to listen to him his second year in the academy. Their shared love of pranks had caught the attention of the boy. The man was rewarded with a small smile tugging at the boy's lip. You promise? You can't get mad, he sounds so young. I promise I won't be mad at you, no matter what. He solemnly answered. The boy nodded and set his tea and plate on the small coffee table. He curled his knees up and buried his head in them. I am afraid, he whispered. Iruka felt his heart melt, and at the same time, hurt and guilt weared. He should have tried harder to reach out to the youth. He knew what it was like to be an orphan. The Chunin pulled Naruto close and wrapped an arm around him. Afraid of what? Lots of things, came the muffled reply in a small voice. I don't want to fail this time, but I can't stand people watching me. I feel like I can't breathe, and I get all shaky. What if Marino-san thinks I faked again, even if I didn't? He'll be so angry, and then he's a Jonin, so he could catch me. And Iruka shushed him and leaned over to rest his head on top of spiky blonde hair. He rubbed a hand down his back to calm the boy. Shhhh, it's okay. I'm sure lots of the other students don't like to be up front. Everyone gets nervous sometimes. And what's all this about Ibiki? Naruto was still shaking and breathing unevenly. He couldn't stop his words now that he had started. He wanted so badly to make the fears and dizziness go away. He and the other two checked over my written test, and they found out I rigged it. Iruka pulled back to frown at the boy. You cheated? That didn't sound right. Naruto might get into trouble for mischievous pranks, but he never cheated or caused trouble at school. Yes, no. I did, but only to get a lower score. He rushed out. Seeing Iruka's face, he tried to explain. I didn't want to get higher than 75%. Because if I score below average, just a bit, in the exam no one will notice. I won't get yelled at. Iruka was now thoroughly confused. So you were trying to get a low score, so you purposely got answers wrong? Wide blue eyes stared up at him. Yes? He breathed, fearing his sensei's reaction. But why would you? Naruto shrugged. I always get in the most trouble when I do things right, so I do them wrong. Like even being polite. People get so mad at me when I try to be polite that I just have to be rude all the time. They just yell at me then. School is the same. He added. I have never been upset when you do well. Whatever gave you that idea? Iruka felt anger and violent urges rise up at the boy's comment about the villagers. Well, he looked back down at his favorite. Jirota-sensei yelled at me and told me to get out her class the first day of my first year. Iruka wanted to curse his substitute. All I did was answer a question right, and she just smacked me and made me stand in the hall the rest of the day. Iruka hissed out a breath. And what does this have to do with the exams? Surely you would want to graduate? He bitterly recalled the shy way the boy had acted around him after he had gotten back from his mission and started teaching his class, and the way Naruto had begged to be allowed to enter the exam early. I just assumed it was the same. I tried to just get by with the lowest overall score, be good at a few things, and pretty bad at the rest, like Rock Lee. Then I could graduate, and no one would really have any reason to be mad, or to hurt me. He remembered that exam. How nervous and then disappointed the youth had been. Why did you fail again the next year? You did just as badly. The teacher wasn't trying to be harsh, but he needed to know, to understand just how badly he had failed his precious child. Naruto sniffed. Why you weren't there, and the teachers really hated me. I had to go first in all the practicals, and the kunai were broken, and he shrugged. It just didn't work. Iruka could hardly contain his anger at his fellow teachers. How dare they single out a child to bully? And this year? He asked quietly. The distraught boy was finally leaning into him. I had everything figured out, just how to do all of it, but Marino-san noticed, and he said that good ninja wouldn't cheat like that, and he was scary, so I haven't been able to throw anything except the written test. Iruka let out a breath. So what you did outside, that was normal for you, Machem. I did my best. He leaned back to look at the soft brown eyes of his teacher. Are you mad at me, sensei? He rushed on without waiting for an answer. 'Cause I'm really sorry, but I didn't mean to cause trouble. Honestly, I just wanted to graduate and be left alone. I promise not to do it again so you don't have to be mad. Hush, none of that now. I am not mad. Surprised, but not mad. I am so proud of you learning so much. I just wish you would have let me know. I could have given you more appropriate lessons. He chuckled lightly, trying to inject some levity into the conversation. I'm glad it's just this though. I was afraid you were sick there for a minute. Naruto was able to smile finally. He was calmed down for the first time since his arrival that morning. His Iruka-sensei wasn't upset, he was comfy, and had some delicious tea. He was feeling so much better, he almost wondered why he had been so upset just a few minutes ago. He refused to think about the dark eyes of the Jonin that followed his every move. Instead, he ruffled his spiky hair and smiled. You know me, I never get sick. I'm gonna be a totally awesome ninja. Getting sick is too mundane for me. He held a mock-serious look. Iruka grinned back and then laughed. I don't know of many awesome ninja who eat buckets full of ramen. Naruto gasped theatrically. Sensei, How could you say such a thing? Ramen is fit for a king. The pair devolved in a fit of laughter. Iruka hadn't let his new findings go, but he couldn't help but laugh with the boy. A knock interrupted them. Iruka noticed Naruto shift uncomfortably. The teacher stood and opened the door to see Ibiki. Naruto flinched and his smile vanished. Iruka looked questioningly at the Jonin. I wanted to have a word with you, Yumino-san. The teacher nodded slowly, wondering why the Jonin needed him now. Naruto, why don't you go on and prepare for the rest of the test? I'll be out in a moment. The boy quietly slipped out the door, giving the grim man a wide berth. Is there a problem, Ibiki-san? Iruka asked once the door was closed again. Not necessarily. The taller man walked over to lean on the back of the sofa. I simply had some concerns about a few of your students, namely, the young Uzumaki boy. Iruka shifted, aware that this could end up being a problem. Naruto? What about him? Is there a good reason the boy is using Chunin-level weapons, sensei? I was under the impression that needles were not taught in the academy. Ibiki wanted to see what the man would do when faced with accusation. If you knew what made people angry, you knew much about them in general. I must say Naruto is giving us all a bit of a surprise today. Iruka was up and pacing. I just wish it were a better surprise, he mumbled. Curious, thought Ibiki. The young teacher seems even more shocked than the rest of us. You really didn't know the boy was capable? Iruka turned to face him. No, I had not even considered it. I hate to say it, but I thought Naruto truly did struggle with the basics. He never did well in anything. I had wondered if it was just the learning environment. Some kids are like that. They do better in real life, practical lessons. I knew he was a bit shy and that he tried to mask it by being a class clown, but I think it went far beyond just timidity. He was rambling by now, the care he had for all of his students, and Naruto particularly manifesting in worry. Hinata is just shy and unsure of herself. Once she has a chance to stand out and accomplish something, she will be fine, I think. But Naruto, I just don't know. I had no idea he was faking test scores and rigging his class work. If I didn't even notice that, how could I really know him? The dark Jonin had heard enough. He hadn't even had to question or push the young teacher. Sensei, I understand that you have a bit of a soft spot for all your students. However, it is not possible for you to closely know and understand each one of them. You have done well getting them this far. There is little more you can do. Iruka sagged, recognizing the truth in the statement. You're right, of course. He glanced at the clock. Only a few minutes were left. Besides Naruto, were there any others you had questions about? Ibiki shrugged slightly. The Hyuga heiress you already spoke of. Shikamaru Nara and Sasuke Uchiha, what do you think of them? Shikamaru is a nice kid. He is difficult to motivate, but if he decides to do something he is very capable. He's a bit of an oddball, but if he didn't alienate others for the sake of Choji he might have been popular. He doesn't much care for the opinions of others. He smiled thin as he thought of the other boy. Sasuke is hard to pin down. He is an excellent student, but I'm not so sure he is really ready to be a full-fledged ninja. Why? He struggles with simple things like balancing skill sets or group projects. He says he doesn't need to drill the academy taijutsu because he had learned the Uchiha style and it is superior. He doesn't like to be paired up for any assignments or activities because the other student will hold him back. I have tried to talk to him about these things, but I don't think he listens. The Jonin hummed contemplatively. Has he ever seen anyone for what happened? Iruka ran a hand over his face and huffed wearily. Not that I know of. I worry that he is too cut off to be able to trust someone enough to talk to them. He doesn't play with any of the others during recess, and he won't talk to me or his classmates. The teacher excused himself then to check on the students and prepare for the final part of the test. The Jonin took his time rejoining the other two observers. Ibiki thought the same as the teacher. Iruka had done well with his perception of the Nara and Uchiha. He had watched the dark-haired boy after Naruto had gone inside. Sasuke had been rude and dismissive of anyone who spoke to him. Only a few blushing girls had been brave enough, or silly enough, to approach him after the medanin was finished. It didn't sit well with Ibiki. He knew the results of arrogance and pride far too well to not be cautious. A bell was rung to signal the start of the last exam and Ibiki was forced to put aside his thoughts for the moment. Naruto had loitered in the hallway outside the classroom after leaving Iruka's office. He felt better and worse after his conversation. Admitting to his beloved sensei he had been lying made guilt gnaw at him, but the understanding made him feel lighter and less afraid. Iruka was the teacher in charge of this exam, so he would be able to understand Naruto. Iruka had told him it was somewhat normal to be nervous or afraid at times. It helped him settle his nerves after the stressful morning. But there was no way Naruto was going to go in the classroom and be stared at by all the other students. He saw Iruka bustle up and slide the door open. Naruto slipped in behind him and took up his spot in the back row with only a few glances. Sasuke glared at him and a few of the others gave him curious looks. They couldn't dwell on him though as Iruka called their attention to the front of the room. The scores for the matches are as follows. Naruto sank into his seat and hoped that for once things would go his way. He had passed, with the Taijutsu test with 3 points. He had 7 points so far, and 8 was the minimum to graduate. He just had to wait out till his turn for the Ninjutsu test. This would be the hardest part. He closed his eyes and let his body slump in his chair. In the background he vaguely registered names being called. Time seemed to slow and speed up at the same time. Finally, and far too soon, Iruka called him down. He followed his teacher into a small room off to the side of the main classroom. A long curved table was set up with a wide clear area in front of it. The 3 Jonin were seated on one end of the table, an empty chair next to Inoichi that Iruka took. Alright, for this portion of the test, 3 jutsu, the henge, kawarimi and clone jutsus, must be successfully produced. The quality and ease of the jutsu will be taken into account on the score you receive. The teacher recited, smiling at his nervous student. Naruto was sweating again under the gaze of the 4 men. He bit at his lip before closing his eyes. The henge was fairly easy, he'd been practicing his own version of it for years. He hastily ran through the few hand signs and a puff of chakra smoke later he was disguised as one of the chunin that guarded the front gates. Every detail was there, spiky black hair and goatee, bandage across his nose, skin tone and height. He'd even managed to make his henge the exact height of his target. The 4 men watching were intrigued for different reasons. Iruka found it odd that Naruto, out of all the students so far, would be the first to not transform into himself. Shikaku found it odd that the boy knew what Hagain looked like enough to reproduce it so well. Ibiki and Inoichi found the detail to show something of the boy's observation of others. Iruka smiled wider. Kotetsu Hagain, excellent. Naruto changed back with a second cloud of grayish-purple smoke. Naruto quickly performed the substitution jutsu with the chair off to the side. He switched back as Iruka noted this down on his sheet. Good, now there is just the clone jutsu, he remarked. This caused Naruto to shift uneasily. He shot quick glances at the 3 Jonin before looking at his sensei. Is it can I? He gulped. Iruka looked up at him patiently. Can you what? Naruto fiddled with the pouch on his leg. Do I have to do the academy clone jutsu? He mumbled. Iruka felt a bit of tension leave him. As long as you are able to produce 3 clones that are not noticeably clones, you can use any clone technique. Naruto nodded jerkily, a wave of relief washing over him. K. He took a step back and crossed his index and pointer fingers on each hand. Ibiki surged up in his chair seconds too late to stop the boy. Shadow clone jutsu, he called. A rush of chakra could be felt before a massive cloud of smoke filled the room. 20 copies of Naruto filled the room now. All of them were solid and exactly like their creator. Iruka could only blink. He'd never seen this jutsu, not to mention this many clones. Ibiki was still standing, a look of shock visible in his dark eyes. Shikaku looked like he wanted to laugh and Inoichi was frowning slightly. The blonde man coughed slightly to break the silence. Well, this is unusual. Tell me, Naruto, where did you learn this jutsu? I saw an Anbu do it once. I had so much trouble with the academy jutsu, so I tried this one. It worked, so he wondered if he'd screwed up. Something was wrong for sure. The interrogator was very stoic, and for him to have that look of shock, you decided to try an Anbu technique. Iruka squeaked, half in outrage, half in amazement. Yeah, is that bad? The boy self-consciously asked. Ibiki slow sat back down. That is one of several jutsu contained in a forbidden scroll of the village, he slowly replied. It creates solid, corporeal clones capable of semi-independent action. It is forbidden because of the massive amount of chakra needed to produce even one of them. Many ninja destroyed their chakra paths attempting it. Iruka blanched upon hearing this. He scuttled around the table to Naruto. Are you alright? Are you feeling dizzy or nauseous? Naruto just looked between the 4 of them, wide-eyed. I'm fine, he absently muttered. Am I in trouble for using this jutsu, since it's forbidden? He seemed to shrink in on himself a bit. Shikaku answered this time in his lazy drawl. Nah, it's fine. The only reason it isn't allowed is because it can harm the person using it. But clearly you are fine. He shrugged. You wouldn't happen to know which ANBU you saw it from? Naruto was caught off guard by the strange question. It was a dogged ANBU. Shikaku chuckled a bit. Yup, sounds like the hound alright. Iruka pet Naruto's head a moment longer before taking his seat. Well, I guess this is all. You can dispel the clones now. Naruto nodded and reached out for his chakra. What wasn't used for the clones came rushing back as they disappeared. Am I done now? Oh yeah? Iruka distractedly stood and handed him one of the headbands from the table. Naruto took it with a shaking hand. You did excellently in the last 3 exams. I think you would have been good on the first 2. The boy blushed. Iruka smiled at him and walked him to the door. Naruto hurried back to his seat and tried to shrink out of sight. Iruka watched him for a moment, before calling the next name of his list. 20 minutes passed and Naruto was clammy and picking at his fingernails. He hadn't been able to ignore the few glances and whispers directed at him. He tried to focus on analyzing his results for today, but he couldn't. Ibiki was also worrying him. The dark man was frightening. It almost seemed like he could see through anything. Naruto wasn't sure where he stood with him. Was he another one of those who disliked him, or was he just strict? He'd seemed truly shocked when Naruto had used the shadow clone jutsu. Why? Was it really that bad of a jutsu? He wanted to yell and pull his hair out. All these questions were running endless circles in his head. He had passed though. That was most important right now. He had passed, but what team would he end up on? How were they being put together this year? He knew in the past the test scores had been used. The highest, lowest, and the best academically were usually placed together. He knew he would have ended up with Sasuke, who hated him, and Sakura, a civilian girl who was obsessed with Sasuke. But now, he had no idea. There was no way to logic through the numerous combinations without knowing how the three Jonin were planning things. With Sasuke and Sakura, he would never have even made it past the rank missions for sure. How could you work together with someone who hated you, and another person who was only going to ogle their teammate? That didn't help him feel any better about the possibilities. He was still anxious and unsure of what was going to happen. Today had been way too much attention for him. Ibiki and Shikamaru were too focused on him. Iruka would be now as well. The Hokage might even ask to speak to him. Oh God, what if he was sent back to the academy for being deceptive? Okay, that's the end of the exams. Iruka, bless him, interrupted his panicked mental rant. Those of you who passed should be here tomorrow at 8 to be assigned to teams. Dismissed. Naruto caught the heavy look the teacher gave him. He knew from past experience that Iruka wanted to talk to him. Naruto sighed but stayed put as the rest of the students rushed out. He didn't really want to have to talk, but he understood why Iruka would expect it. He reluctantly joined Iruka once the room had emptied. So Naruto, how about we go get some ramen and have a conversation? Iruka smiled at him. Naruto smiled tentatively back. At least he doesn't seem mad. Maybe it will be good to talk. Iruka-sensei always understood the pranks after all. Ibiki shoved his chair back after the last academy brat was done. Were the exams so pitiful and friendly when he was a genin? Inoichi was flipping through his notes from the day. Man, it's hard to say if these kids are horrid or have potential. The blonde grumbled. It seems to be about half and half. Most of them seem to have potential, and a huge hang-up. Shikamaru yawned. The Aburain kid and the Inuzuka are some of the only ones who seem to be balanced already. The ones with the most potential also seem to have the most crippling weaknesses. Hinata could be as much of a prodigy as her cousin if she wasn't so self-conscious. The Uchiha boy is a piece of work though. Ibiki nodded when Inoichi said this. I think Sasuke Uchiha should be carefully placed. The interrogator stood and began to pace. He is far too self-absorbed and his arrogance will cripple any team at this point. Shikamaru sighed. This is going to be troublesome. I know the council will be pushing for him to be placed on Kakashi's team. Sharingan training and all that jazz. Ibiki frowned. That is the worst possible placement. I would put him with Kurenai, but only after some counseling. Inoichi marked down their ideas for Sasuke and sat back. What did all of you get from Uzumaki? Ibiki grinned predatorily. That one is quite the ninja already. I don't think any academy student has so fully concealed their ability in decades. He has the skills that point to genius like Itachi or the fourth. The man laughed slightly. If it hadn't been for the test papers, we may not have really pinpointed what was off with him. Inoichi frowned now. The blonde had tried to piece together what he knew of the boy into some kind of profile, but he was coming up with two different results. I don't understand him yet. He dresses to blend in and tries to fail the test. He seemed to clam up any time attention was paid to him, yet he is well known around the village for pranks and bad behavior. It almost seems like he was trying to be two different people. Shikamaru let a slow smile spread across his face from his relaxed position at the table. Oh my, that makes so much sense now. Inoichi spared him a disparaging glance as his vague statement. The Nara clan had chuckled at his friend. What would you do if people took a strong disliking to you after you displayed a skill of yours? The blonde man scowled. Tell them to beat it. Shikamaru, what does? And if you were a lonely, orphaned kid seeking acceptance from said people? Ibiki scowled darkly. Inoichi cursed. You think he hid to be accepted? Shikamaru only grinned. Think about it. Naruto showed advanced and even specialized skill in every part of the exam. I know some of the younger Chunin and a few of the old-timers have major issues with the kid. The Jonin don't, and the Chunin who were around during the Third War. But the kid would only interact with civilians who don't have a clue and a few Chunin at the academy. Shikamaru was really on a roll now. Fear causes all kinds of reactions, and almost none of them are good. I expect that the kid has hardly ever heard a kind word outside of Iruka. Naruto most likely only had to show his ability once for it to be shut down by someone or other. The three Jonin all scowled. Inoichi thought of his little girl Ino. He would be furious if someone destroyed her confidence like that. So, what to do with the boy now? Ibiki voiced. He has all the skills to be a great ninja, if he receives some guidance. Shikamaru nodded. I think he should be passed. He has some issue, I'm sure. But the hardest thing I see is placing him on a team. He and the Hyuga girls seem the most delicate to place. Their team could make or break them. Ino might be good for Hinata. Hinata seems to have mostly confidence lacking, not ability. Ino is very stable as a kunoichi, and she is from a clan. That will make it easier for the two to understand each other. Inoichi was tapping a pen on the table, thinking hard. Ibiki nodded. Good, then one other, a boy to balance out things. Kiba Inuzuka would be a good counterpoint for the two. Shikamaru pondered it, voicing his thoughts as they came. The Inuzuka clan is very protective of those they deem part of their pack. Hinata would be protected by him. Also, he is loud and boisterous, which may bring Hinata out of her shell. So Hyuga, Yamanaka and Inuzuka will be a team. They would make a good capture team with Kakashi Hatake as their sensei. Ibiki was pleased. I think Naruto Uzumaki will require a different type of team. He seems to excel as an undercover type, or an all-rounder. His facade is quite impressive, and long-standing it seems. Shikaku slumped in his chair. Naruto would be a bit harder to place. None of them really knew what he was capable of or how far he had advanced. His personality was also in question. Was he shy and unsure, or suspicious and bitter? It was hard to say. Shino Adirame might be a good fit. He is fairly average in all areas, but he is a solid boy. Yes. And he is quiet enough to not overwhelm Naruto. Inoichi tapped his pen again. I get the feeling that Naruto will need support, and having to deal with a competitive or more forceful teammate may be more of a struggle than a help. The interrogator spoke up. So Naruto Uzumaki and the Aburame. That leaves one more. I don't think having any of the civilians on this team would be good. I know more things go on around that boy in the civilian areas than the shinobi. Shikaku took a mental inventory of the remaining genin hopefuls. That pretty much leaves Choji Akimichi and my son. Inoichi nodded. Ibiki let the two men speak first. They, after all, had first-hand knowledge of both boys more so than him. Choji is a sweet boy, very loyal, but I don't think his skill set would fit well. He would be intimidated by Shino, and I don't see him and Naruto benefiting each other on a team. Shikaku agreed readily. Yes. Outside of a team they would be good friends if they spent enough time together. But not a good fit for a team. That leaves Shikamaru. The pair looked to Ibiki for confirmation before Inoichi marked it down. Good. That just leaves the Uchiha and Akimichi boys and a few of the civilians. There was a long, waited pause. Each of the three was thinking of the remaining students, and how best to place them. Inoichi coughed lightly as preamble. Speaking of the civilians, I don't think Haruno should pass at all. He watched the others for their reaction. He knew that it would be a bit of a hardship. Konoha always needed more kunoichi for the field. Many retired earlier to start families, and because of the nature of some of the missions they were sent on, many also retired to escape the rigors. Sakura Haruno was intelligent to be sure, but she lacked the mettle and mindset necessary to be a ninja. She is a poorer candidate, Ibiki concurred. If he had his way, the interrogator would have just cut her immediately. Her being a civilian complicated things. Not many purely civilian children tried out for the ninja academy. It was a bit of an unspoken rule that clan children, even those from much lesser clans, had an edge over others. Many parents protested this, citing unfair advantage over their own progeny. It wouldn't look good for a girl, a civilian girl, to be failed. But none of the three were willing to place an unfit ninja on any team. Too many deaths had been a result of such placements. Ibiki sighed. Damn politics, can't even function without breaking some rule or offending some councilman. I agree. She just doesn't have the mindset, or the physical ability. Inoichi looked both relieved and a bit sad as he made the note on her test papers, then on to the Uchiha. Shikaku scowled, a departure from his normally bland, bored looks. He has some issues. Major ones at that. He is very arrogant and pugnacious. I got the feel that he thinks he is head and shoulders above everybody else because of his family name, and that on top of his wounded hero complex from the massacre makes him almost impossible to work with. Inoichi hid a smile at the rant. He knew teamwork was pivotal to his old friend. It always amused him to see the lazy Nara react to these situations. I agree with that. The boy is clearly still bothered by what happened. Itachi, I know, has tried to get him to open up or seek out friendships, but the boy hasn't done it, Ibiki confided. Itachi is only 18. He can't be expected to be able to parent Sasuke on top of being a Jonin and off and on in ANBU. I would recommend putting conditions on Sasuke's graduation, such as? The interrogator raised a scarred eyebrow. I would put him on probation. Require him to attend some counseling and a mind healer, as well as requiring obedience and courtesy towards his sensei. Very well. Ibiki reluctantly agreed. The rest of his will be critical, I think. Akimichi may be a good fit. You say he is loyal and friendly. Those may be qualities that will endear him to Sasuke Uchiha and allow for there to be a team bond. Ah. And Yuri Kurenai would be an excellent sensei. She is very stable and her focus on genjutsu would be very suitable for an Uchiha. Also, she might be able to connect with Sasuke. I know she has studied quite a bit of child psychology in preparation for her first genin team. Inoichi looked very happy with his idea. The other two could see no fault and agreed. The third place could go to the young boy who was granted asylum with Mamachi Zabuza. Ibiki suggested. That would be good. Haku is capable, and he is hard-working. None of the others at the academy would be well suited. Shikaku sighed. Many long hours spent, and they had finally finished with their assessments and assignments. He was on his way to the Hokage with his report. He knew that officially what he and the other Jonin had been doing was only a suggestion and the Hokage would make his own decisions. But he also knew Saratobi would not have asked them to do all of this work if he didn't trust their judgment. He smiled at the secretary outside the Hokage's door. He is expecting you, she said before he could ask. Shikaku just nodded and opened the door. Saratobi was sitting at his desk with his pipe in hand, reading through a scroll. He looked up as the Jonin commander came in. Shikaku, you are later than I expected. I trust that you got everything in order? Sure. Here is what we came up with. He handed over the 5-page report. The old man hummed as he skimmed through the graduating list and failing list. 8 failures this time. More than usual. And these 3 recommended to be dropped. You are sure on them? Unfortunately so. Those 3 wouldn't make it in the field. Better to have hurt feelings now and live than die because of it. The old man nodded heavily. These teams are quite good, yes, well done on that. He muttered before pausing on Team 7. This one, are you sure on this? I had no idea that Jonin would ever consider taking a team. Shikaku grinned. It was hilarious to see his face, but yes. It might be unprecedented, but we thought it was a good fit. Saratobi smiled. Very well then. I will sign these and send them on to Iruka. Thank you. The commander bowed slightly and took his leave. Naruto slept poorly that night. He had talked more with Iruka and he had explained more of his plight with his beloved teacher. It had been hard to admit some of his fears and the things that had happened to him. Iruka had been very calming though, and the boy had made it through their dinner without getting too panicky or worse, crying. But the long conversation had left him drained and on edge. He had known he was likely to have nightmares, after the disaster that was the Jonin exam and bringing up all of the other things with Iruka. He had tossed and turned on his small, lumpy mattress for hours before he was even close to dozing off. When he woke after dawn, he felt almost as tired as he had before he'd slept. Yuji, this is horrible, he sighed as he noticed the clock read 7:30. He had half an hour to be at the academy. He got up and showered and dressed quickly. He rummaged through his fridge and pulled out a dish of leftover yakisoba he'd managed to make earlier that week. He gobbled it up and dumped the container in the sink for now. It was 7:50 now, and he'd have no time to spare. Perfect, I won't have time to get all worked up. Iruka had given him several more ideas to keep him calm and functional when under stress. Naruto would be trying them soon, he suspected. The boy locked his door and leapt to the rooftops. He headed directly to the academy and slipped in through a window. He took up the same spot from yesterday and waited. Iruka was the first person to come in. He smiled and waved to his teacher, and then tipped his chair slightly as he waited. Within minutes several others had arrived. He saw Hinata and Choji walk in together, then separate to find seats. When Sasuke entered, the room felt as if it chilled from the force of his glare. Naruto closed his eyes, pretending to be dozing. Shikamaru was really sleeping a few desks down. Iruka checked to make sure everyone had arrived. He then called the class to order. Listen up. I'll be announcing the teams by number. Listen for your names. Stifled murmurs were hastily covered up. Everyone was eager to find out who was with who. Even Naruto was anxiously listening. He would do his best for Gigi, and to keep Ibiki happy. But whoever ended up teamed with him would make a big difference. His one consolation was that he didn't see Sakura here today. She must not have passed, and therefore couldn't end up on his team. Team 1, Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. Teams 2, 3, 4 and 5 were all listed off with no fuss. Team 6, Sasuke Uchiha, Choji Akimichi Haku. You sensei is Yuhi Kurinai. This struck up a rash of whispers. No one knew who Haku was. And wasn't Kurinai a girl's name? Sure, the rookie of the year wouldn't be placed under a female teacher. Naruto was just glad he wasn't on that team. But who did that leave to be on his team? There weren't too many people left. Team 7, the room settled as Iruka went on. Will be Shikamaru and Nara, Shino Aburame, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your sensei will be Marino Ibiki. Naruto choked on his breath. Ibiki? What? Why would the head of TI take a Jonin team? And why on earth am I on it? I can't face him every single day from now to who know how long. Iruka had finished while Naruto was panicking and had moved on. You all did well to have gotten this far. You are now moving on to another stage of your lives. Being a Jonin isn't something to be taken lightly. You are all ninja now, and must behave as such. His stern look melted away to be replaced with a smile. Good luck. Your senseis will be arriving shortly. They will call for the team number, so make sure you remember yours. He gathered up a few papers from his desk, and left the room. A buzz of conversation slowly started out. Naruto focused on the room, trying to ignore his raging thoughts by following Iruka's advice from the night before. Hinata was shyly sidling up to Ino, who smiled at her. Kiba was grumpily stomping down while complaining about being put on a team with girls. Choji had yet to move, but was watching Sasuke glare at everything that moved. A quiet word next to him startled Naruto. You are Naruto, yes? A muted voice asked. He looked up, see a boy wearing a high-collared tan jacket and dark round sunglasses standing beside him. Yeah? He replied slowly before realization struck him. Oh. You must be Shino Aburame. I must be more tired than I thought if it took me that long to recognize him. The other boy inclined his head slightly. Shino took a seat then and watched Naruto. You are unusual. Why? Because you are difficult to read and evaluate. Why? Because you do not display the same standard of capability. Why? I do not know, and this is why you are unusual. Naruto blinked. You am okay? He had no idea what to make of that. Did Shino not like him, or was he just saying he didn't know him very well yet? Shino wasn't looking at him anymore. Instead he was watching the door as it opened and a Jonin walked in. Team 3 left then. Naruto had so far managed to keep his anxiety in check by carefully noticing details about everything else. Who was talking to who, where were people sitting, what were they wearing? He found Shikamaru during this, still appearing to be asleep. He idly wondered if the other boy had even heard their team assignment. He was proved wrong on his former observation when Shikamaru sat up and shoved his hands in his pockets. Lazy as always, he shuffled over to the other two. He plopped down next to Naruto's other side. The blonde was by now, slightly nervous being flanked on both sides by people he really didn't know. The Nara yawned. So, Naruto, where did you learn to use Senban? The question came out of nowhere. Shino turned to look at Naruto after Shikamaru asked. Well, Naruto fidgeted. He wanted to be able to get along with his team, and that would mean being truthful with them, but he was also reluctant to share what he thought of as his secrets. I have a few scrolls at home. One of them had a section on throwing needles, so I learned. Shikamaru frowned. Just like that? Geez, that's crazy. He yawned again. I'm so not keeping up if you decide to train all the time. Too troublesome. He lay his head down on the desk. Naruto turned back to observing the room. Shikamaru, however, was observing his teammate. He'd never really paid much attention to Naruto. He'd seemed very obvious to the genius Nara. Naruto had been shy when they first started the academy, but very quickly turned into a loud goof. Shikamaru had assumed the other boy was just seeking attention because of his lack of parents, or to make up for his class failure. It seemed, by yesterday's display, that this was not the case. Shikamaru was not used to being surprised by his peers. Adults could, on occasion, catch him off guard. It struck him as odd for Naruto to display such a drastic jump in ability when there had been no hint of it before. But that wasn't right. Now that he thought back, there had been a few things that hadn't fit. The pranks, his most obvious actions actually. It hadn't occurred to him until now, but how on earth did a failure of a pre-Jonin manage to evade Jonin and ANBU for hours? And some of the pranks were very delicate and precise, requiring a rather strong and diverse skill set. And then there were the few times in class that he had noticed Naruto shaking, usually when he was placed in front of the class. He thought it was from laughter, due to the reactions from his pranks or other antics. Now that seemed to be woefully inaccurate. Naruto had not seemed to enjoy being paid attention to yesterday, or now. He had watched Shino approach the other boy, and Naruto had flinched and shrunk back very slightly from the quiet boy. It had been a reaction, and seemingly a deeply ingrained one. Shikamaru briefly wished he could talk to Ino, not something he often thought to be sure. She would have more knowledge on the psychology and behavior due to her family jutsus. But they were on different teams now. He wouldn't be able to talk to her anyway. It wouldn't be right to share someone else's secrets without a much better reason than his own curiosity. If he had to guess, which he didn't want to, he'd have to say Naruto was accustomed to physical attacks. He sighed and closed his eyes. This was just too troublesome. Naruto was currently an unknown factor, and he suspected it would take some time to really understand him. Shikamaru would just let things go for now. Naruto was the first to notice Ibiki walk in. There were only 3 teams left including theirs. Shino noticed shortly after. They both stood and Naruto carefully shook Shikamaru awake. The 3 genin marched down to greet the imposing man. Naruto hung back and let Shino greet him. You are Marino Ibiki. The Aburame stated flatly. Ibiki just turned and motioned them to follow him. Naruto was internally panicking. Is he mad? What is he gonna do with us? Shino sure had guts. Shika didn't even say anything. Surely the Hokage wouldn't let him. Ga. He nearly tripped over a rock in the path. They had made it out to a training ground while he was thinking. Shino was still standing with his hands in his pocket. Shikamaru was slouching and yawning where he stood. Ibiki, though, he was watching the 3 of them closely. The Jonin crossed his arms behind his back. I am Marino Ibiki, head of torture and interrogation. The 3 of you are now my genin, and thus are my responsibility. There will be some rules for you to follow under my tutelage. If you cannot abide by these rules, you will not remain my students. Naruto gulped at the dire tone. First, you will conduct yourselves in a way befitting of an honorable Konoha shinobi at all times when on a mission, regardless of the nature of that mission. You will protect and look out for each other inside and outside of missions to form and maintain a team rapport. You will not disclose any details of what goes on in TI to anyone. He gave them all a narrow stare before turning around abruptly and taking a few steps away. He sat on a felled tree with a wide trunk. He gestured to the open space in front of him where several stumps and exposed boulders were. Have a seat. Naruto shuffled reluctantly closer and perched on a boulder. Shikamaru was on the ground with his back against the stump while Shino was sitting on a stump between him and Naruto. I'd like to go over each of your skills and weaknesses, but first we will be giving statements about ourselves. The Jonin coughed, feeling very out of place talking to children like this. I will go first. Giving them some information on himself would put them at ease. He could see the tension in Naruto especially. Shino was still and watchful, but not overtly ill at ease. Shikamaru on the other hand seemed totally at ease, only the sharp glint in his eyes betrayed him. You know my name, I am 27 years old. I became a chunin at age 15. I enjoy practicing genjutsu and reading books. I dislike traitors and dango. My goal in life is to make Konoha as safe as possible. He nodded to Shikamaru to go next. Man, this is such a pain. The lazy Nara sat up a bit more. Shikamaru Nara, I'm 12, I like to sleep and watch the clouds. I don't like troublesome things or hard work. My goal is to live unremarkably, have a simple family, then die unremarkably. Ibiki had to bite back a laugh. How very much like his father. Shino spoke up in his quiet, precise tone without prompting. Shino Aburaim, 12, my likes, insects, trees, and logic. Dislikes, people who kill bugs, illogical behavior. Goals, to become a strong ninja, serve the village and the clan. Ibiki could see how people were put off by this boy. He seemed odd, and very robotic. The Jonin could see potential though. Lastly he looked to Naruto, who was pale, sweating and curling in on himself. That was rather worrying. And you? He voiced none of his concerns. If the blonde boy couldn't function around him, this wouldn't work. He regretted his extreme scare at the exam now. If Naruto was afraid of him, he wouldn't be able to teach him. Naruto was clenching his hands, trying to center his attention on the present, and not his fears. But it was so hard, what with everyone looking at him. I am Naruto Uzumaki. He swallowed, and closed his eyes. Shikamaru was nice, he had to remind himself, and Shino had never bothered him. I am 12, I like ramen, and am getting better at my ninja arts. I don't like attention or assumptions. He forced his eyes open, trying to keep ignoring the scarred Jonin watching him. I would like to become an excellent ninja someday. Ibiki nodded once. Good. You all did well. Reinforce the communication, praise and affirm positive behavior. Now we are going to go over some of your strengths and weaknesses. Naruto, you first. He wanted to see what the boy would say. Ibiki had a strong suspicion that his abilities were not fully tested in the academy. Ibiki was pleased to note that after Naruto had mentioned his dislikes, Shikamaru and Shino had turned somewhat away from him. They were still paying attention, but they weren't so obvious. Naruto had seen this as well, and it made a tight knot of anxiety loosen. I have mastered all the academy basics, except Taijutsu. I learned a mixed style. I can use the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Wind Style, Wind Wall, Water Style, Water Gun. A few others he rubbed sweaty palms against his leg. I can sort of function as a sensor. I can use a Tanto or Wakizashi. Senbon too. That might be it? He probably forgot something. But right now he couldn't think of anything, much less list off things he knew. Ibiki had to wonder how he learned those jutsu. He let it be for now though. I am capable of all three of the academy basic jutsu, as well as the academy taijutsu style. Shino was still and his voice was toneless. I am proficient also, in my clan Kekai jutsu. Naruto was very glad to have the attention off of himself. He also was curious to learn more about his teammates. He knew only a handful of information on the two boys, and even less on his sensei. Ibiki seemed pleased, but also indifferent to Shino's information. He turned to look down at Shikamaru. Well? The large Jonin rumbled when the brunt bit stayed silent. Ma troublesome I am, of course, able to perform the 3 academy jutsu, and taijutsu. I can use shrunken and kunai. My clan uses shadow techniques to trap our enemies. Naruto frowned very slightly. He spoke up before he really thought. But what can you do? Ibiki hid a smirk. The blonde brat had caught that, huh? Shikamaru's dark eyes fixed on Naruto for a long moment. I am capable of the shadow possession jutsu and shadow, strangle, hold jutsu. My father is currently teaching me 2 more difficult jutsu as well. He sat back then, and watched Ibiki. Good, all of you have a fairly good range of skills. We will be working on assessments, and team skills for the next 2 weeks. The Jonin was patiently waiting for someone to ask for information on him. He had expected it before he got to his own plan for their team. He was surprised when Shino asked him about himself. And what about you, Ibiki-san? You have not told us about yourself. Ibiki took the chance offered to him, and stood loomed over them. As the head of TI, I have a vast pool of knowledge and skill. I know the best ways to break the mind, body, and soul. He was somewhat disappointed to only see Naruto gulp. I have years of experience and training. In my care you will be able to learn more than most genin would dare dream. The Jonin didn't mention that some of that knowledge wouldn't be desired, and would likely give them nightmares. Naruto in particular would not likely take that well. I am the best interrogator in the village. I have completed study in anatomy and chakra networks along with many other subjects. He sat back down then. Shino was unchanged but Shikamaru looked intrigued. Naruto was avoiding looking at him. Ibiki was really starting to wonder why he thought this was a good idea. He wasn't even remotely suited to dealing with children. He really had no idea how to treat them, especially the skittish boy he had already scared. I would like you all to meet in Training Area 18 tomorrow at 5 a.m. Bring your standard equipment. We will begin drills and training. The Jonin waited for acknowledgement before standing and shunshuning away. The three genin sat still for a few seconds before Naruto shifted in his seat. Shino turned to face him. Shikamaru was the first to speak up. Man, this is such a pain. Marino Ibiki, so not the Jonin I would have picked. I won't be able to slack off now. Naruto picked at the hem of his pants, trying to calm his nerves. Ibiki was gone, and the other two were genin he knew. Neither had done anything to him. He didn't need to be afraid. I guess maybe we should get to know each other? The blonde managed to say. Shino inclined his head slightly. Logically, we are a unit now, and teamwork is to be expected. We should train together and also spend large amounts of time in each other's company. Why? Because this will allow us to maneuver more fluidly together. This was all stated very concisely, without much inflection. Shikamaru sighed and stood up. Fine, I guess. Let's all go eat. I'm starved. Naruto bit his lip, thinking of all the times he had been refused access to shops and restaurants. He didn't want to say anything to his new team, but it might be worse if they had to find out the hard way. They turned towards him, and the boy quelled under their looks. Squaring what little resolve he had left, Naruto started to speak. I don't think it's a good idea for me to go with you. He took a quick breath and went on, cutting off Shino's question. People around the village don't really like me very much, and I wouldn't want you two to have any trouble because of me. Shikamaru tipped his head and examined Naruto's wary stance. Why would anything happen? He slowly asked. I don't know, just stuff goes wrong around me. The other boy mumbled. Shino raised one eyebrow. Logic would require some reason for unfortunate occurrences. I see no reason for you to be a catalyst for such things. Shikamaru nodded. Yeah, right. I know a good place, and the staff and owners are really laid back. It's fine. Both dark-haired genin were curious as to why their other teammate would have said anything like this. They had observed how uncomfortable he was with speaking in front of people and having their attention. He'd even said as much earlier, so why would he say anything over some odd reason like people don't like me? Nevertheless, Shikamaru was hungry, and he could see the benefit in being closer to his team. Naruto was just looking between the two with a look that was a mix of hopeful and resigned. Shino stood up and turned to the Nara. Lead the way. Chapter 9. Last time, Shino stood up and turned to the Nara. Lead the way. He did, making sure that Naruto also followed him. Naruto watched Shikamaru and Shino walk in front of him down the road. Shikamaru had insisted that the restaurant he was taking them to would be fine. Naruto was sweating slightly, and his stomach rolled with nerves and fear. He told them, at least a little, about what to expect. It seemed though, from how they reacted, that they didn't really understand what he'd been trying to say. Both of them had insisted that it would be fine, that it must be nothing. Naruto knew better though. The other two hadn't lived through 12 years of this treatment, after all. He could already feel the glares and hear the whispers following him. The boy focused on the ground beneath his feet, and keeping the heels of his teammates just in his line of vision. Shino and Shikamaru were both quiet, thinking about what their blonde companion had said. Shino was unsure as to the objectivity of the suggested treatment. The bug user would have to see for himself if Naruto had objectively noted the actions of people in the village. Shikamaru, however, was more willing to believe Naruto right off. He had watched the boy during their classes, as he watched all those who shared the room. He recalled, only vaguely, the first day of the academy. Naruto had come in the room later than everyone else, shy and quiet. Shikamaru had been sitting with Choji in the back corner. Naruto had sat the middle, off to one side. Shikamaru had noted the shabby, worn cloths, and the way he had kept his shoulders curled in towards his body. Shikamaru hadn't thought much about it at the time, putting it off as first-day nerves. But now, as Shikamaru examined his own memories, he recalled the way Naruto had shied away from everyone, even the other kids at first. Then a vivid scene of a teacher physically throwing the boy out of the classroom after he'd asked the question surfaced. The more the brunette boy thought about it, as they walked slowly through the town, the more things he could recall. He even remembered one substitute hitting the boy last year after he had answered a question no one else could. Shikamaru could have, but he chose not to. He knew that the question was to advance for the class. Yet somehow, Naruto had known the correct answer. He frowned, sticking his hands deep into his pockets. Why had he forgotten all these things? They seemed too glaring now, but at the time, it just seemed like Naruto was a troublemaker, goofing off and getting in trouble for it. He would have to watch, now, observe, and then maybe ask his father about it. Shikamaru looked around their small group then, noting that while Shino was walking just barely behind and to one side of him, Naruto had hung back, almost not even walking with them. Next, the Nara looked around them lazily. He saw far more eyes turned towards them than he had expected. Most of those who were watching them had dark, angry looks. A few people were looking at Shino and him with curiosity or mild recognition, but Naruto he was receiving the more awful glares, accompanied by whispers. Shikamaru couldn't hear everything that was said, but it was enough. That thing is back. Someone should do something, get rid of it. Thought that demon had been dealt with. I wish it would die. Yes, he would definitely be having a long conversation with several people. His father would be the first, tonight if possible. Tomorrow, he would try to get Ibiki alone, and then Shino after their training was done. For now, he would be trying to see what else he could learn about the situation. They had reached the little BBQ place that Shikamaru met Choji and Ino at. It was run by the Akimichi family, and Choji's mother was often the cook. He slid open the shoji door and lead his two teammates in. He lead them back to his favorite table and pushed Naruto into the middle of the booth. Shino took the other side of the corner booth and Shikamaru sat on the outside. Naruto was stuck between them. He was fidgeting, waiting for something bad to happen. When he saw a waiter walking over, he looked down and tapped out a quick rhythm on his leg. Shino subtly shifted closer to the blonde, having also seen and heard the villagers' reactions. Why if it isn't the Nara kid? Boomed the waiter, an uncle of Choji. I didn't expect to see you today. Shikamaru just shrugged. Well, gotta eat sometime. The round man laughed. Too true. Who is it you've brought? Naruto flinched and pulled his body closer. This is my Jonin team. Shino Aburame and Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto was now sure that something would happen. People all knew his name, even if they didn't recognize him. Surely, now the mistake of letting him in would be corrected. The large man just smiled though. Ah, Jonin team. Your dad still hangs around with his Jonin team. Better get real close, these teams can last your whole life if you do. Shikamaru just nodded and then rattled off a list of foods. Shino listed only a few things, and when it came around to Naruto, the boy was looking horribly unsure. Oh well, he started, picking at his sleeve. Shikamaru decided to save him. Naruto would probably like the beef strips and takoyaki, with pork cuts, teriyaki beef and miso soup. He shot a glance at the other to see him nod. That would be good, thanks. After the waiter left, Naruto peeked over at Shikamaru. Thank you, Aya. Shikamaru leaned back and closed his eyes. It's no big deal. I come here often enough to know what's good. Naruto just sat, looking between his lap, his team and the door. Shino showed an unexpected amount of consideration and steered the conversation away from Naruto for the moment. We came to discuss ourselves. As I am often quite reticent, I will begin. You may ask questions for me to answer if I can. Shikamaru went with it, and asked about his colony of Kikai. My Kikai are fairly strong for my clan, and I have been working on finding a way to use them to store chakra as well as consume it. I wish to be able to perform more jutsu in the future, and would require more chakra to do so. Okay, so do you train frequently? Daily, I perform a set of varied drills. They range from Taijutsu, a few ninjutsu and target practice. Shikamaru huffed, and made a face at that. Okay, so Naruto was very quiet for a while, mostly listening. But eventually he started to chip in here and there. He never asked his own questions, but he did add a few comments. Shikamaru took the next turn of 20 quetzales. What are your ambitions? Was Naruto's hesitant question. I don't know, maybe to just have a good, honorable career, and then retire and have a family? He munched on his grilled shrimp. I don't like putting too much effort into things, but if I have to, I will. Shino next inquired. Do you have hobbies? It seemed an odd question coming from the more rigid boy. Shikamaru thought for a moment. I like playing Go and Shogi, especially with my dad. Cloud watching and taking naps are also on my usual list of things to do. Naruto cracked just a hint of a smile at his lazy answer. The blonde was slowly letting himself calm. Nothing had happened, and no one was even watching their table. He munched on his meat slowly, listening closely to his team. Shikamaru was explaining some of his training to Shino, who was still very still and quiet. Naruto could understand being quiet. He let himself get lost in thought, thinking about the day. It was only about 3 in the afternoon, but he felt exhausted. He wasn't sure how he would be able to handle this every day. Ibiki truly scared him, and he already knew the Jonin had it out for him. He wondered how long it would be until Ibiki started using him to demonstrate torture jutsu or something like that. He didn't understand why the Hokage and Iruka would have done this to him. Iruka even knew that Ibiki upset him. The scarred Jonin was not the kind of man Naruto would have picked to handle any children, and certainly not himself. Would the man be horribly cruel to him? Would Naruto have to spend more time trying to get those healing jutsu to work on his own? Who would he be able to turn to if the man tried to ki? Naruto? Are you listening? Shikamaru laid a hand on his arm, his face too close to Naruto's. Naruto couldn't hold back the flinch and the stiffening of his limbs at the unexpected touch. He saw Shikamaru's dark eyes sharpen. Oh, sorry. He hurriedly blurted out. Distract him. I can't really explain that reaction. I guess the exam yesterday tired me out more than I thought. He forced a small smile and closed his eyes to hide the insincerity. Shikamaru frowned again, but sat back. Yeah, I guess. It's your turn. He gestured to the Aburame boy. Shino asked if you have any particular strengths. Naruto blinked, and then racked his brain. Oh well, I am good with kunai and stuff. I either get jutsu right the first time, or they don't work at all. He ruffled his hair. I don't get it, but it always ends up that way. Shino seemed interested. In my clan, we have done many experiments dealing with chakra levels and their effect on jutsu. What had been determined is that often one's chakra levels denote what types could be used. Logic also showed that some jutsu could be used in ways to allow for larger amounts of chakra than they were intended to use. Naruto perked up at this. So you think that there might be a way to help? The Kikai user nodded once. It is a possibility. Shikamaru leaned back. I have access to some scrolls on chakra control and meditation to balance chakra. I can lend them to you, if you'd like. Naruto was astounded that both of his teammates were so easily offering advice and help for him. He was used to nearly everyone ignoring his problems, or enjoying his struggles. Iruka tried, but the Chunin was too involved in his work to devote the time it would take to make a difference. The Hokage was even more so this way. Being the leader of a military village left no opportunity to look after a single orphan boy. The blonde boy blinked back wet eyes and focused on his food. He wasn't sure why these two practical strangers were being so nice to him, he only hoped it lasted. He would need something to look forward to with his team. Ibiki would not be that thing. Author's note at the end. I just wanted to take a moment to address some things people have commented. First, the Sasuke chapter. I know a couple of people haven't liked it, but I do feel like it needs to be there. Later in the story, things with Sasuke's team will come up, and I felt it was better to show the changes and what happens as it happens rather than in a bunch of flashbacks later. I will be, hopefully, adding another couple of sections to Sasuke's part soon. That will probably help it all fit in better. Someone commented that they hope to see Kakashi more. Sorry, but Kakashi isn't going to feature too much. He will be in the story, but the main focus of the story is Naruto and his team. They will encounter most of the other teams from time to time, but Sasuke's team and Naruto's are going to be around the most. This is turning out kinda long, sorry for that. Just a couple more things left. Where is Sakura? Well, for this fanfic, I couldn't fit her in a way that I liked. I'm not too fond of Sakura at times, and I decided to leave her out. If you notice, Ibiki and the others have doubts about her being up to the task of being a ninja. They decided to fail her and remove her from the ninja program rather than risk her and her team's lives. So Sakura might pop up at some point, but she didn't make the cut for ninja. Hinata's team placement is the last thing. A reviewer asked why she, quiet shy Hinata, was on a team with loud and louder Ino and Kiba. It is so the three of them can balance out each other. Yes, Hinata is reserved, and especially Kiba is loud. The idea is this: Kiba is energetic and wild, Ino is self-confident and capable, but not really that loud. Hinata is horribly underconfident in herself. Ino and Hinata can get along, both being girls, in ways that Kiba won't. Kiba can help by being loyal and fiercely protective of all of his pack. Hinata might help tone down Kiba, and teach him some manners, while Kiba will help Hinata loosen up. The Hyuga clan is the most formal and strict clan in Konoha, while the Inuzuka are the least. The Yamanaka family is more normal. The three of them together will balance out all these things eventually. The three Jonin sat in the restaurant for several hours, letting the conversation ebb and flow. By the time Shikamaru announced that he had to be getting back home, both Naruto and Shino were talked out. The Nara had been observing Naruto, and had seen the boy let go and engage in their talk, and then gradually recede back into his shell. Shino had just gotten more quiet. It was a bit awkward to part ways, both clan children feeling a sudden sympathy for the orphan boy. They both had people waiting for them, parents and other family to greet them and share a smile or nod with. Shino wondered how Naruto would react to visiting his home. Shibi and his mother had always been very supportive of him, knowing that Aburame often were ostracized because of their Kakachu. Being labeled as creepy and weird was expected at this point. Shino had always had them to come back to be comforted and encouraged. It seemed that Naruto didn't have that. Shino had seen the same emotions in the eyes of the villagers that he had occasionally seen directed at him in much weaker glares. Why would Naruto, who as far as he knew, was nothing but another Kyuubi orphan, be so despised? The boy wasn't from a clan, he had no family, and he had never done anything to warrant such treatment. Sure, he was sometimes loud, pranked people and didn't do so well in school. None of those things could possibly be the cause of such malice. Kiba Inuzuka was wont to act very similarly, and the dog boy was only lightly chastised. Shino also wasn't so sure that his impressions of Naruto were accurate. This day had showed many things that contradicted the previous ideas he'd had. During their talk, Naruto had said several things that had caught Shino's attention. He'd mentioned scrolls and study more than once. Shino knew that very few books or scrolls could be accessed before one was at least a genin. The Aburame recalled how poorly the other had done in all of the school tests, up until the exam. Logically, it shouldn't have been possible for Naruto to find books to study before now, or for him to have such a sudden spike in ability. Why did this happen? The only explanation would be because the blonde had been deceiving everyone. How long? Why? To what extent? Shino rarely found others around him to be interesting, choosing to focus on his colony and training normally, but he was caught up in the web that seemed to wrap around his team. He would be looking for answers, and he would not let it rest until he knew. Why? Because, logically, he should pursue this interest he had in the effort to make at least one or two true friends. Naruto was only too happy to return home, to his quiet, dark apartment. He had unexpectedly said much more than he thought he would be able to force out. He would have thanked Iruka for his advice. He made it through an entire day of interacting, and speaking up more than once without too much trouble. His limit had been passed by after a while though. If Shikamaru hadn't decided to call it a day, Naruto would have. Naruto had decided that he liked his team, at least those two anyway. He had noticed that he had been placed in the center, the place most protected, and both of them had taken note of his discomfort, and silently shifted things to help. Shikamaru had helped him order, Shino had moved the conversation off of Naruto, and onto himself. He knew that both of them had noticed some of Naruto's more revealing reactions. The blonde wasn't really sure why he didn't want them to find out the full extent of his misery. He told them some of it already. But the thought of Ether Boy seeing his tiny, rundown apartment, or knowing the whole story behind his hidden personality made him even more reticent. It was dumb, but he would much rather have Ibiki know, and mock him for it. The blonde boy forced himself to go to sleep rather than dwelling on the day though. As he drifted off to sleep, Naruto couldn't help wondering if he would be able to understand what a family was like. Both clan children would go back to a home, family. He had never really wondered too much about it, but the sudden closeness with the two other genin made him curious and wistful. Shivering, he rolled himself into his blankets and closed his eyes. "I'm back," Shikamaru called as he slid the front door closed. Yoshino, his mother, poked her head out of the kitchen. "You're very late, I expected you back several hours ago." The spoon in her hand was waved in his direction. "I hope you weren't just taking a nap." Shikamaru quickly shook his head. "No, I was out with my team." She frowned at him. "Humph, your father is in his office. You should see him before you go to bed." "You've eaten?" He nodded, glad to have avoided his mother's wrath. "Troublesome woman always bugging me." He slipped off to see his dad, both to escape Yoshino and to ask about his team. Shikaku was lounging in front of his Go board when Shikamaru found him. He looked up from the board. "Hey, how'd it go?" Shikamaru flopped down on the cushion next to his father and huffed. "Ibiki? You really thought that Marino Ibiki would be a good sensei?" He leveled an unimpressed look at his father. The clan had only shrugged. "It makes sense. And every now and then, something unexpected is good." Shikamaru had to admit that was a valid point. Before he found a suitable replay, Shikaku was talking again. "So how did you like your team?" "I know it's not Ino and Choji," but he trailed off. Shikamaru thought for a moment. "They are good. Shino is a solid genin, and he is capable of much more given some time." Shikaku nodded, having thought the same about the Aburame boy. Naruto though, the adult felt a thread of worry. He'd hoped that his son would accept the blonde boy, so very much like Shikaku remembered them. "He's a mystery. I don't know what to make of him yet." The worry eased slightly. "How so?" The Nara clan head wanted to see what his progeny would come up with. Shikamaru was highly intelligent, and he'd yet to stop surprising his father. Things don't match up around him. At school, he always seemed to be just another loud, inattentive kid who didn't care to behave. He reminded me of Kiba, but then when I thought about it, I could recall all kinds of things that contradicted that. He was quiet, and sometimes no one even saw him around. He knew things that the rest of the class didn't, and then you saw what happened at the exam. The young Nara shrugged. "It doesn't make sense. There is no way that Naruto advanced that rapidly, but he never once showed that kind of experience and skill during class." Shikaku nodded slowly. He had to choose his words carefully from here on out. "I too wondered how much he really knows and does. It says something that it took Inoichi and Ibiki and I together to notice something was up during the first test. Naruto could be curbing his results, like someone else we know, to avoid attention. He does seem a bit nervous at times." The boy scowled at the hint to his own academy performance. "Yeah, and he also seems to be targeted by the village for some reason. Everyone glared at him today." Shikamaru noted the slight flinch and frown from his father at this. Testing, he probed a bit more. "He also seems to be exhibiting some signs of abuse." Shikaku jerked up, his eyes lit with an unnamed emotion. "What?" Shikamaru was caught off guard by the venom in that single word. He slouched down more and examined the Go board. He did it when he first started the academy, flinched and shied away from any kind of touch. He did it again tonight, flinched when I got close to him. Shikaku closed his eyes, letting out a slow breath. He couldn't believe this. He'd thought the boy was just avoiding being targeted for being dangerous, not avoiding physical harm so constantly. He would have to talk to Ibiki and the Hokage. Any kind of treatment that endangered a child was not acceptable. He stood, ignoring the calculating look his son was giving him. "Be kind to Naruto, Shika. Not many people are. He has much more connection to this village than most would understand." He left Shikamaru with a pensive thought that he really wouldn't be able to laze around with his team. Ibiki would be working them hard, no doubt, and something was going on around Naruto. It was something that Shikamaru had the nagging feeling that he had to find out about. His gut told him it would cement the three genin together with unbreakable bonds. When Shikaku stormed into the Hokage Tower, face like thunder, Saratobi's secretary expected declarations of war any time. The Nara clan and Shikaku in particular were widely known for their lazy attitudes and laid-back mindsets. For the Jonin commander and clan head to be this worked up, surely something catastrophic had occurred. Saratobi knew him enough to tell that this wasn't a village matter. "Shikaku, I was just sitting down to have some tea." Please join me. He waved the other man into his office calmly and activated the privacy seals. Shikaka sat and glared slightly at the cup of tea he was offered. Hokage-sama, something has come to my attention. The older man raised an eyebrow. Oh, Naruto Uzumaki is on a team with my son. Saratobi nodded. Yes, with the Aburame heir, under Ibiki. The implied question hung in the air. Shikamaru came to me with some questions and concerns regarding the boy. The Hokage hummed, understanding the thunderous look the Jonin wore. Shikaka had a vested interest in Naruto. What was the matter? Shikaka visibly drew his emotion in check. Shikamaru noted signs of some suspicious lack of comfort Uzumaki has with physical contact. The Hokage read between the lines and frowned. I see. He slowly mumbled. That is indeed something to be worried about. You are sure that your son correctly noted Naruto's reaction? Shikaka nodded. I also noticed something off during the exam. Saratobi stood up. The Nara mirrored his movement. I will look into this situation. Grim-faced, the leader of the village promised. Shikaka bowed slightly and left. He knew that Saratobi had a soft spot for the Uzumaki boy. He'd do what he could without causing a fuss. The next morning, 3 genin, 2 of which were bemoaning their lack of sleep in the early hour, made their way back to training ground 19. Ibiki was waiting in the same place they had met the day before. He watched them all closely. Shino was stoic as always, showing no signs of weariness or irritation. The Nara boy wore a scowl and yawned repeatedly. If he was anything like his father, he would hate getting up this early. Naruto had dark circles under his eyes, and was dragging his feet. Ibiki wasn't sure if he had not slept because of worry, or if he was just tired like the other boy. The 3 genin stopped in front of him, and waited. You have arrived on time. Good. He gestured for them to sit. I would like to discuss some aspects of functioning as a shinobi team. Naruto seemed to calm at least a bit at this. He'd been expecting to be used as the dummy for TI demonstrations today. He hadn't slept more than a few hours off and on. Ibiki brought out a small laminated map of the training ground. As a team, working as a unit, taking into account each other's skills and deficiencies is critical. In the field, being able to function together can make all the difference. As you know, this year's genin exam was quite different than any previous. Naruto nodded, frowning at the map. Shikamaru and Shino didn't react. This is why. He tapped the map with a senbon. The Jonin set 4 colored game pieces on the map. Each member of a team of mission unit must be able to integrate themselves into the whole. In past years, many genin were injured or died as a result of a lacking in this discipline. C-rank missions are most often what kills genin. The first C-rank mission in the one that truly tests them. The genin all perked up, sitting straighter and focusing on the Jonin. Even Shikamaru had lost his pretense of sloth. Good, they might just get what he wanted them to understand. If you cannot function as a team, bond together and trust one another, you will die. They tell you in the academy that finishing your mission is the first priority. But out in the field, your team's lives are what come first. This devotion to each other, the desire to protect, is what elevates Konoha above other hidden villages. The will of fire. Shino solemnly intoned. Ibiki nodded once. Power born out of the desire to protect those close to you. In other words, strength devoted to the lives of innocents. In Konoha, the civilians and children are viewed as the single most important thing to keep safe. Naruto interjected, quiet and all the more potent for the pain clearly here in his voice. We should protect them, even when they hate us for it. Ibiki wondered just what the kid meant, how much was from being mistreated and how much he knew. He personally felt no inclination to keep such secrets. He knew that children could be more tight-lipped about things than some adults could, but it was not his decision to make. Perhaps, a few well-placed recon assignments, and some old mission reports and history drills would help them along. For now, he just glanced at Naruto. Yes. As ninja, we will be misunderstood at times. Our life is so unlike that of the villagers, and it is best that way. Why? Because exposing the entire village to the harshness of shinobi would lead to a fear like that of the village hidden in the mist. Why? Because logically, civilians cannot handle the extreme nature of the reality of ninja. Shino inclined his head once after his long explanation. Ibiki was a bit surprised by the extent of understanding and thought that had been put into the comment. Correct. He rumbled. To foster the building of our team, we will be training together. This is a map of this training area. The 3 pieces are you. He gestured to the aforementioned items. For today, I will observe as you 3 come up with strategies and maneuvers for preset situations I will outline for you. Each of you must be honest and accurate in your interpretation of your own abilities. The Jonin paused to take stock of their reactions. He wasn't at all sure about this idea, but it was the best he had come up with. He couldn't very well have the genin play with Anko in the Forest of Death to test them out. I really am not a good choice for children. I might know how to get information out of them, but teaching and mentoring? Nope. Shikamaru was looking at the map intently already, likely forming ideas and plans in his head. Shikaka did that often. Shino was studying the map and his 2 teammates equally, but otherwise remained still. Naruto had, predictably, the most extreme reaction. He had paled slightly, and was biting his lip. Ibiki wondered why. There was no doubt that his own presence made the boy uneasy, and it was possible that having to inform others of his abilities was having the same effect. Ibiki understood that giving away your defenses like that could be a death sentence on a mission or in hostile company. The Dark Man would have to watch and make sure Naruto was willing to open up with his team. If he couldn't, or wouldn't, it would cause trouble. He would give the kid a chance though. You never knew what could happen. 2 hours later, the 3 Jonin were all frustrated and temperamental. Their Jonin sensei had seemed to take sadistic pleasure in poking holes in every single idea they had come up with so far. They had only gotten through three of his scenarios. Shikamaru had taken the first one, an escort-type mission with missing Nin attacking. It had taken him the least amount of time to get a grunted it'll do for a start. From Ibiki. Naruto had gone second and his situation had been quite different. He had to plan an infiltration to an enemy village. It had taken the better part of an hour for him to piece together a plan. Shino had only just finished his own, an assassination, a few minutes ago. The 3 had struggled with their theorized teamwork at first, having to rely on only what the other 2 said they could do. Shikamaru, having much more experience with strategy in the form of Go and Shogi, found it particularly frustrating to be unsure of the capabilities of his team. In the games, one knew exactly how a piece functioned and where it could go, but with people, it wasn't so black and white. The Nara was currently glaring at the map, wishing he knew a fire-style jutsu to rid himself of the blasted thing. Ibiki was unsure if he should laugh at his genin's irritation, or be depressed by how much work he had to do with them. He had tried to not just be negative in his criticism of their efforts, but he knew he hadn't been successful. Naruto's had been particularly hard. The blonde boy had a streak of brilliance, for sure. Many aspects of his ideas were so abruptly decided on, and so workable, Ibiki knew he had a knack for spontaneous tactics. However, the boy was so unsure of his own self and his team that he would always plan too conservatively. The Jonin stood up from his seat and tucked away his map. Enough. We will now be sparring. All 3 boys were positively eager to do anything else at this point. Naruto would even take public speaking over more maneuvers and strategy right then. They trooped out to a more cleared area of the training ground. It was a wide area with grass marred by jagged rocks and a few flowers. You two, he pointed to Shino and Naruto. Will be sparring first. Shino moved to a lose-ready stance and waited. Naruto bit his lip and followed. No jutsu yet. Weapons are allowed. Shino gave a sharp nod and then began to circle around with Naruto mirroring him. Naruto was currently panicking. He had listened to Shino and Shikamaru in their earlier lesson, and he had no idea what he should do. He knew he was supposed to be showing his skill set, but the blonde was too used to hiding those things. Inevitably, in the past, any sign of good behavior or aptitude in anything would get him the wrong kind of attention. He'd never been comfortable with honestly showing things since. The exam was the most he could get himself to do. And even that had been a struggle. I don't know what to do. Shino isn't Sasuke, he doesn't hate me right now. If I do better than him, will he start to? Or will he be more upset if I don't? He jerked out of his musings when a fist was planted in his stomach. God dash. His breath whooshed out as he rolled awkwardly to the left. Shino could barely be seen to be frowning behind the high collar of his jacket. You are not paying attention. Why? Because you are worried about something. The bug user almost seemed to huff at him. Naruto scrambled to his feet and flushed. Sorry. Sorry. He stumbled over his words, feeling a nervous tremble start up in his hands. Ibiki interrupted their spar. Uzumaki, switch with Nara. Naruto flinched, but complied. Shikamaru shot a quick, curious glance at the other, as he jogged over. Naruto was much slower in joining Ibiki on the sidelines. Same rules, go. Ibiki called out. The 2 clan heirs took action much faster. Shino made the first move again. He flicked out 2 kunai at the other boy. Shikamaru dodged fairly easily. He was a hair too slow to avoid the kick aimed at his torso. Shino's foot planted firmly into his left shoulder, knocking the Nara to the side. Shikamaru recovered quickly, flipping backwards on his hands to gain some distance. He threw several shuriken and followed up with a combo kick to the lower leg and a fist aimed at his head. Both missed. Shikamaru had not expected the little bit of extra speed the Aburaim put on. He started calculating the speed into his plans and had to scrap a few. They went back and forth for several more minutes with either one gaining or losing much. Both took a few blows here and there, but neither were able to gain much ground. Shikamaru so far had taken more damage than the other. That was about to, hopefully, change. Shikamaru was carefully herding and luring Shino into place. The Aburaim hadn't seemed to notice the dip in the ground, lined with a few medium-sized rocks. Shikamaru was only a few feet in front of it at this point. The boys had been still for a few seconds, catching their breath. It wasn't long enough for Shikamaru, but he hadn't much choice in the matter. Shino was coming at him again, and Shikamaru had to duck and roll back just a bit. Shino's fist, holding a kunai, whipped past his ear. Shikamaru let the other come at him again, this time moving to the left. Shikamaru was able to slip around Shino and catch him off guard, flipping the other boy into the small depression. Shino landed hard, hitting his back on the rocks and coughing harshly. Ibiki had been dividing his attention between the pair sparring, and Naruto, who was currently shooting him worried glances. He called the match. That's it. Nara wins this round. He was rather impressed with Shikamaru. Despite having slower reactions and less speed and power, the boy had been able to maneuver his opponent into a trap without being hurt seriously in the process. He'd seen the way that Shikamaru had shifted his plans after unexpected elements were shown. It had been like watching a miniature Shikaku in some ways, and at the same time, the boy was very different from his father. Ibiki would have to test out his intellect in a one-on-one setting soon. Shino was more of what the Jonin had expected. Steady, solid in the basics, the bug user had a few tricks up his sleeve, and he had seen the boy calculating his moves and attempting to create a plan while in action. The Aburame would do well. He seemed to be balanced well between speed and strength. The only one he was still unsure of was the Uzumaki boy. Ibiki had noticed almost immediately when Naruto had started panicking. The blonde had started to curl his body inwards, hands trembling and breathing speeding up. Ibiki had no idea what had caused the panic, but he couldn't have his students reacting this way. But now he had to focus on the present. Later he would have time to catalog everything. He noted, a thin thread of approval trailing absently, that Shino and Shikamaru had both returned and were waiting patiently beside Naruto. Ibiki once more felt a twinge of unease at the prospect of dealing with the genin closely. You both did well. I will have some scrolls on taijutsu forms that may fit your existing styles tomorrow. Now go and work on some chakra control drills. He directly addressed them. He turned to Naruto. I will be speaking with Uzumaki for a while. Shikamaru's sharp gaze darted between the two. Ibiki was impassive, Naruto was blanched and twitching. It pleased Ibiki to see the concern evident in that look. What pleased and surprised him more was Shino shifting to face him and crossing his arms. You are singling out Naruto, why? Logically, there should be no more reason for him to be isolated than I. Naruto also looked at him with shock. Why on earth would Shino face the frightening Jonin for so paltry a reason? Naruto was almost glad to think of something other than the Jonin standing next to him, but he wasn't sure thinking about his teammate would be better. He couldn't think of any reason for the other boys to want to help him. He wondered what reason Shino would have to say such things, and more importantly, how long he would be in the other's good graces. Ibiki looked over the Aburame boy. His back was ramrod straight. The way he was facing the Jonin suggested determination and a slight aggression. Interesting, Naruto Uzumaki had both of them looking out for him. The Nara can see beyond the first impression, and was raised to value others. The Aburame, though, are usually solitary and reclusive. It is interesting that this one seems to be taking a more direct interest in his team. I am not singling out Naruto, he replied, purposely using his first name. I will not unfairly judge my team. He made sure to tower over the genin and scowled down at him just slightly. He was the Jonin, and the team commander. He had to be given the appropriate level of respect and deference. Shino was silent, likely examining the man. Very well. He turned and stalked off towards the trees. Shikamaru gave the odd pair one last glance before following. Ibiki watched just long enough to make sure they were both doing as ordered. Naruto had watched the byplay, feeling more numb and confused after hearing Ibiki state that he wouldn't be isolating Naruto. It wasn't true, he was sure. People always did, even if it took them a while. Only the Hokage hadn't. Even Iruka-sensei had started out being just like everyone else before they had gotten close. At this moment though, Ibiki was staring at him. You will need to be honest with me, was the first thing he said. The Jonin sat down on the grass and gestured to the space in front of him. Naruto reluctantly sat, legs crossed in lotus position. Ibiki huffed slightly at the obvious fear. Really, he should have known something like this would happen to him. Give him a hardened enemy ninja, and he could find out every secret they possessed. Send him on a dangerous solo mission, he could handle that. But give him a scared kid, one who he had scared, and the Jonin hadn't a clue how to handle it. Oh, there were theories, sure, but theory could only work in as much as the subject was ordinary. He might not know too much about Naruto Uzumaki, but he did know that the boy was not an ordinary child. I cannot help you if you won't tell me what the problem is, he continued. He frowned when Naruto stared incredulously at him. What? But I mean, why would you? The Jonin didn't know what to make of that. He knew that such a reaction couldn't just be because of him. He decided to answer the stuttered question first, and then see what happened. As your commanding officer, it is my job to make sure my team is all in the best condition it can be that physically or emotionally. I take that part of my job very seriously. He tried to soften his voice. I am also responsible for 3 kids. I meant it when I said that children are the treasure of Konoha. Right now, 3 of Konoha's treasures are under my supervision. Naruto just bit his lip and avoided his gaze. I don't know what to expect. He finally got out. The boy couldn't decide if he should be freaking out, or if he should believe Ibiki. Eventually, he gave in and answered. Iruka had said that talking to people, getting them to understand, would often help with his own anxiety. Everyone always gets mad at me when I guess he ruffled his hair, in irritation at himself. Couldn't he at least talk? I would always get yelled at, or even smacked around a bit if I did anything right, or good, I mean. There, he'd gotten it out now. He glanced up to see Ibiki emotionless. And? The question comes without any pressure, and surprisingly no judgment. Naruto thinks for a moment. He's still nervous, but Iruka was right. It helps to at least start talking. Well, I guess I'm afraid that people will hurt me when I succeed. Ibiki nodded slightly. I see. I can understand that. You do know, though, that you can't continue this on my team? Naruto shuddered. Why yeah, both Nara and Aburame seem to be a bit protective of you. Most Aburame don't really care for the company of others, and this one stared me down for you. Shikamaru Nara is also closely watching us right now, probably so he can figure out what to do to help. Naruto couldn't help glancing over at the pair who were sticking leaves to their foreheads with chakra. The boy started. Ibiki hummed in reply. Why do you think they care? They can't care for long. Ibiki wanted to throttle whomever had put these ideas into his head. This might be more of an issue than he had previously thought. He hadn't expected physical abuse. At the exam, the three Jonin had noted his reactions, and Shikaku and Inoichi's ideas for their source were good. But this seemed to go deeper. Ibiki would have to step up his plans now, and maybe work in meetings with a few other people to help his team along. For now, all he could do was talk to the boy. He looked down at the blonde before continuing. They have their own reasons. My own would be because I can see your value. Naruto gaped at him. The man, who he could admit had given him nightmares, was trying to comfort him? No way. You are much more capable than you realize. You understand the heart of the will of fire much more than many people twice your age. Why you really mean that? Naruto hardly dared to hope. Ibiki would have little reason to lie though. If he wanted to be cruel to Naruto, he'd already had ample opportunity. The Hokage wouldn't put his ninja, especially Jonin, in such blatant danger. The old man cared deeply for his people. He'd seen, once years ago, how much it hurt the old man to lose any of his shinobi. He might not trust Ibiki yet, but he thought he could trust the Hokage. Naruto watched Ibiki closely when he answered. I do. Naruto figured he could deal with this, maybe, eventually. Training had continued after that. Ibiki had them all drilling taijutsu and kunai and shuriken practice. He corrected Naruto more often than the other two, but Naruto was almost shocked to note that it wasn't done out of malice. Everything Ibiki pointed out or corrected really did help. His taijutsu was not that good, he knew, despite winning his match against Sasuke. He never sparred with anyone, and never had much help at the academy classes. Naruto knew his style was a good one, and he knew all the kata. What he couldn't learn from a book though, were the nuances. Little things with his balance, aligning his joints and body could only really be taught like this. Naruto was surprised to note that even through the course of the day, he could move more quickly, and his blows felt stronger with all the proper movements. Shino and Shikamaru were also being critiqued, so he didn't even feel spotlighted. He didn't dare hope too much, not yet anyway. But it was hard not to feel his mood lighten. If Ibiki was telling the truth, he might survive his Jonin team. Iruka had tried to talk him out of fearing everyone in the village. He'd argued back that he had experienced more than enough of the people's nature to be accurate in his interpretations. This was too early to tell, for certain, but it might just be like his old sensei had said. He would wait and watch. It might take a long time, but he would eventually learn what to really expect from these three people he had been placed with. Naruto. At his name, the blonde spun around, finding Shikamaru holding out a scroll to him. He blinked, finding it strange that he had zoned out around other people. His target was covered in clumps of saban though, so his body at least had kept going. Shikamaru was talking though. Sensei said that he had something to do. He assigned us to go over these old mission reports, and make a report on the effectiveness of the teams in them. The brunette looked particularly displeased to be sent home with more work. Naruto just nodded and accepted the roll of paper. Okay. Yeah. He stuttered back. Shikamaru just sighed and turned back to his own target. He said to finish it by tomorrow. Naruto went on to gather up all of his needles and carefully pack them away. He had to go on his bi-monthly foraging trip tonight. He hadn't had much to eat these last several days. The boy shyly waved goodbye to his team and then hurried away. He missed the narrow-eyed look that Shino gave him as he departed. Shikamaru slouched over to him after he was sure Naruto was out of hearing range. Hey, he mumbled. I was wondering if you had a bit of time? The Nara carefully didn't say what he wanted. He wasn't quite sure he should be doing this. He had no idea how to approach Naruto about the oddities he had seen. Shino had also been watching Naruto throughout the day. Shikamaru had seen the bug user frown from time to time as well. Ibiki had been pretty normal, from what little Shikamaru knew of him. But the man was a Jonin. He could be hiding things from his Jonin. The Nara didn't feel like he could come directly to Naruto or his sensei yet. Shino though, he might be his best bet. Figuring out what was wrong with Naruto, and how they could help would be his official extra credit project, he decided. I have no obligations for some time. The other boy said after a long pause. Shikamaru nodded. Good. I have something I wanted to discuss with you. Shino nodded after a short pause. He too had spent the day trying to puzzle out their blonde companion. He wouldn't push too much into the other's life, not yet anyway. Shino knew that many people, himself included, required time to open up. He wouldn't have appreciated pushy teammates. I suspect that this has to do with a mutual acquaintance. He intoned. There were many things about Naruto that gave off a bad vibe. Things were not like they should be. How exactly, and to what extent, he wasn't sure. Shino wouldn't let his team and budding friendships be damaged if he could help, though. Shikamaru nodded, hearing the unspoken reference to Naruto. Okay, good. Let's go somewhere else, though. I don't feel like this should be out in the air like this. Depending on what they came up with, it might be quite harmful to be overheard. Naruto was shy and clearly did not appreciate attention. There was no need to cause any more problems when there were already several hovering over him. Shino agreed silently. The Abdurrahim lead them this time. He knew of several quiet spots around his clan lands where they would be undisturbed. The pair were silent, both lost in thought. When Shino stopped, they were in a small clearing surrounded by dense underbrush. A tiny, worn-looking shrine stood to one side of the cleared area. Shino slid open the carved door and gestured for Shikamaru to enter. The inside was a single open room. The walls had faded murals painted on them, with carefully crafted shelves almost blending into the scenes. On the tatami mat floor, a small table with a pair of cushions was resting. This is my hideout, I suppose. Shino murmured in the quiet. No one else even knows it's here. Why? Because no one else explores this area. Shikamaru sat and waited for the other to join him. So, I wanted to talk about Naruto. The Nara still felt a bit of guilt worm its way through him. He didn't want to do this in secret, but he didn't think the boy in question would really answer him. Shino just nodded. This would be the logical reason. Why? Naruto is troubled, and something is wrong. He would not tell us though. Man, this is going to be such a drag. Shikamaru sighed and leaned back. I take it you notice some things that don't make sense. We should compare what we saw. Shino was quiet for a moment. He presents himself inaccurately. He has no confidence, and yet he has great skill. His warning yesterday about the village being hostile was correct, more so than he even told us. He is afraid of people, everyone including us. Shikamaru idly picked at his shirt. I noticed that what I remember from the academy doesn't make sense. He is and was set up to fail constantly. Why? The village has no reason I can see to isolate him so much. I don't know anything about him. He's an orphan, was born around the time of the Kyuubi attack like the rest of our class, and he has no clan. That's it. He never said anything else that I can recall. They sat in silence for a while, both contemplating. Shino shifted slightly then. He brought his hands up to the tabletop. I am somewhat familiar with the looks he received in the village. He paused. Shikamaru was caught by surprise when the other boy went on with a nit of caution in his voice. People occasionally look at my clan that way. What? Why? He bit out. The Nara hated being out of the loop of information. Now, it seemed like he was mentioned something about both of his fellow genin. Our clan jutsu, and our Kakeichu are not always looked on fondly. Was all Shino had to say. Shikamaru started turning the words and their previous train of conversation over in his mind, but what could Naruto have that would cause the same reaction? Something is missing here. It has to be something big. The negative response to the Abdurrahim clan could be easily understood. Many civilians and even other ninja found the idea of allowing a colony of insects to nest in one's body too sickening. And the Abdurrahim clan was rather eerie at times. Shino had yet to display it, but Shikamaru knew that when the host was particularly agitated, the Kakeichu could buzz from within. His father had mentioned the experience being quite chilling once, a few years back. Shino was still silent. The Nara sighed again, leaning back on one arm. This is going to be such a pain to work out. He hesitated, but went on. He wanted to form a strong team, and being honest with each other would go a long way towards that. I don't really like not going to Naruto directly about this. I know he won't be open to talking about things right now, but it just makes me I don't know. It feels like we're treating him like a threat or something. I too feel this way. Logically though, it would not be in the best interests of anyone involved to confront him at this time. Why? Because he would likely see us as attacking him. Naruto is, as I said, insecure about himself. Shikamaru nodded. It's a real pain, but I was thinking we could stay late after our team meetings and do some independent practice with him. It would give us more time together, which could help us uncover this mystery. Why? Because we will be spending time bonding over shared experiences. Shikamaru shrugged. Something like that. He yawned then. I can bring it up tomorrow, see what Naruto thinks. Shino agreed. I will also seek out advice from my family. They may know something more about Naruto that we do not. They sat there for a few more minutes, occasionally bringing up another point about Naruto of their team to consider. Both left the small shrine with preoccupied thoughts. Tomorrow, they would start trying to figure out what was going on. Ibiki left his genin with scrolls and an assignment. He had a few guests to visit this afternoon before he could go home to work out more training and tests for his team. There would be some paperwork to deal with as well. The Jonin would be pushing the 3 genin more as the days went on. Right now, he was easing them into team practices and routine. Once they got more comfortable around him and each other, he would be pushing their limits. Naruto and Shikamaru would be harder to gauge than Shino. The Abdurrahim didn't downplay or conceal his skill. Both the others did. Shikamaru was too laid back and lacked the drive to prove himself. Naruto was just timid and cautious. The blonde boy might have legitimate reasons for being that way. Ibiki would be assigning a few of the new recruits, and maybe an ANBU or two to look into this. The Hokage would not be pleased if something had been going on around Naruto. For that matter, Shikaka would have a lot to say about it too. The Jonin sighed slightly. He had too much work to do now. Kids were too much trouble. He was never getting married. TI headquarters was rather quiet when he walked in. The petite woman at the desk nodded silently at him as he passed. Enko couldn't be in the building if it was this calm. Shame, she would have been a nice addition to his interrogation routine today. Ibiki stalked through the hallways to the cells, putting his 3 kids out of his mind for the time being. He passed the ANBU guard outside the cell and entered to see their target. The man was tied with both chains and a chakra seal. Ibiki shut the door behind himself and towered over the seated captive. My, our guest must be tired of waiting. No matter, I will have this done soon. He let a malicious grin quirk his features before he started. 2 hours later, outside the small cell, the hallways echoed with the rasping sobs of their guest. Naruto walked quickly through the streets to his apartment. He took as many back alleys as he could, but he did have to cross a few areas with people. He held his homework close to his chest, in fear of losing it. He wouldn't be chancing Ibiki's wrath over a failed assignment anytime soon if he could help it. Iruka-sensei was scary enough. He didn't need to find out what Ibiki would do if he failed. His apartment was just as he left it when he passed through his window. He checked everything carefully to be sure. He had just put his scroll down on his bed when a bundle of scrolls on the kitchen counter caught his eye. Naruto couldn't help his grin at the sight. He loved getting new resources. He had no idea who could be leaving them for him, but he loved them all the same. He hurried over and scooped them up. A large book was at the bottom. He picked it up curiously. He only had a few books. Most of what he had were easy readers from when he was just teaching himself to read. This book, bound in dark brown leather with what seemed to be painted lettering on the front, was very fancy. The title read Sealing and Matrices, the Basics. Naruto had never heard of such a thing. What on earth were matrices? He would read this book though. He read every single thing that was given to him. Even though some of them were boring, he wouldn't discard any information. Whoever chose these gifts always left things that were really helpful too. He set aside the book to check through the rest of the scrolls. 2 were more advanced kata for the 2 styles he was combining, and 1 was a scroll on chakra and chakra building exercises. The 4th and final scroll had a second roll of paper wrapped around it. Naruto pulled it off and was about to toss it away when the ink on it caught his eye. It was a note. This was very unexpected. Naruto had never had any sort of correspondence from his benefactor. He hastily glanced over it. Naruto, good job. You passed the academy and are now a genin. You have a team now, so take good care of them all. I hope you continue to progress well in your studies. The book is a family heirloom from your mother's side. Take good care of it. The scroll with this note is a jutsu scroll. It contains 4 basic jutsu of various sorts. Be careful when trying them. The fire and wind ones can be super dangerous if something goes wrong. Keep working with the shadow clone jutsu. It will come in handy. Good luck. A smudge doodle of a dog was the only signature. The handwriting was messy and more of a scrawl than anything else. Naruto couldn't help running a finger over the words though. After years of these things just showing up, he finally had at least some contact from their giver. Whoever this was, Naruto was forever in their debt. He reread the note, and then stared at the doodle. The more he looked, the more it looked like a picture of a wild hound he'd seen once. That's decided then. I'll call this person Hound now. Grinning again, he flopped back on his bed. Things might just be looking up. He had talked with his team more easily today, and Ibiki might not be as bad as he thought. Iruka had given him advice and lots of ideas to help with his anxiety. Now he might be able to figure out who Hound was. He reminded himself that things were still really new right now. It would take a while for any of these things to actually pan out if they were going to, but the little bubble of hope he'd felt at training that morning was rising again. He sighed and rolled over to pick up the scroll from Ibiki-sensei. He flipped it open and started reading the report. The mission was from at least 20 years ago. It involved a team called Team Jiraiya. The team, a genin team, was supposed to take a scroll containing trade agreements from a wealthy merchant in a fire country city to a trade city just inside the borders of the Land of Rivers. They were also transporting a small amount of other things for the same client. The Jonin was listed as Jiraiya, who Naruto recalled, was one of the Sannin. The 3 genin were not named, but Naruto would have bet they were all competent if they had that caliber of sensei. He browsed the details of the mission for several minutes. He would have to get out his map later and look at the route they took and compare to others available. The blonde sat up and carefully tucked away his new scrolls, but left out the homework one. He had to get a move on with his hunting. It was already nearly 6 o'clock. The sun would start to dip below the horizon soon. He didn't mind being out after dark, but it was easier to find some of the things he was after when it was light. That in mind, he switched his nicer clothes out for a torn and stained jumpsuit. It had been orange once, but now it was more brown than anything. These were his work clothes. He left his forehead protector and his pouch of kunai and shuriken. He needed to pack light, so he could bring back what food he found. Only his saban and a long-bladed hunting knife were kept. He slung an empty pack on, and then checked his traps before leaving. He left the main area of the village swiftly. He took off north and slightly west, over the rooftops. He kept low and did his best to move quietly and stay out of sight. He passed by the busy parts of the village, and out past some of the clan areas. He kept going through the trees where the buildings were suitable any longer. There were few people out this far, and nearer to the walls and the river there were less. Naruto kept to the treetops for a little longer. He's sure this was far enough away. Dropping down to the forest floor, he secured his pack and made sure he checked the area for any signs of people. He calmed his breathing and concentrated. When he tried, he knew he could often tell if there were ninja around. He listened hard, and sniffed the air. Nothing. Last, he sensed around him for any tingle that would be chakra. He didn't really know what this ability was, but it was damned useful when he snuck around. People wondered how he got into some of the places he did when he pranked. This would be their answer. Confident that he was alone, the blonde boy crept to the river's edge. He took a deep breath and then jumped in the water. He couldn't open his eyes once in the cold rush, but he knew the feeling of the large stones embedded in the banks and bed of the river from long practice. He crossed his fingers in the seal, and created 2 clones of himself. One pushed off the other to propel him upstream. The second clone followed after Naruto, and Naruto used it to pull himself a few more feet up. It was hard going, but he made it through the underground portion of the river and to the tiny pocket of air just outside the wall. A sealed chakra barrier was cutting off his progress. He could feel the tiny hint of chakra buzzing only inches in front of him. The pocket of air was only big enough for his head, and then the protective wall was above it. Naruto dispelled his clones and reached up to slide the single loose stone aside. It had taken him weeks to chip away the mortar to free the large stone. Inside the wall in the spot, there was a hollow pocket. It wasn't a tunnel, it didn't lead anywhere. It was just a hollow space left in the building. Naruto could use it to get outside the walls undetected though. He hauled his dripping body up into the space and shook some of the water off. To the left, there was a small swell in the wall. It was a roundish area only 3 feet around. Naruto had to get this part just right, or Anbu would be coming. He slid another loose stone aside and backed up as far as he could. A running jump propelled him out past the seal shield that coated the wall. He had to keep his limbs all in a line to avoid the fringe of the seal, but he made it. His landing was much more rough. He didn't have anything to catch himself on, and so crashed into a bush headfirst. He lay still for a moment, shaking off the impact. Eventually he sat up and took stock of the area. He knew this particular stretch of the forest well. He had discovered this way out about 3 years ago, and he had spent many hours wandering around out at night. He started making a mental list of what he was after. He only had so much time to spend out tonight. Ibiki would be expecting his report tomorrow after all. Let's see, there is meat of course. A rabbit or 2 would do. Then, some veggies and fruit if I can find it. So set a trap, then go farther to forage. The wild asparagus and tubers should be in season. He walked to a small fallen tree and moved aside a bush to pull out a set of wires and twine. He untangled them, and then set up 5 snares and traps around the area. He then headed deeper into the forest. 2 hours later, he was back in the clearing, with a good amount of plants and fruits in his pack. Only 1 trap had caught anything. He unstrung the rabbit, and went around to collect the other snares. He then set to skin and clean the animal. He grimaced once he was done. He hated getting bloody, but hey, a guy's gotta eat. It took a few minutes to clean up and hide any signs of his presence before he was ready to head back in. It was harder to get back inside the hollow space in the wall. The blonde made his way back to the river and made a set of 3 clones. He had them carefully arranged into the necessary configuration, 2 crouched down with the 3rd perched on top of the others. Naruto then climbed up alongside the 3rd clone. The 2 on the bottom stood slowly and then the 3rd clone grasped Naruto's wrist tightly. A breath later, Naruto was hurtling towards the gap in the wall. He had to focus on keeping his body still and rigid to be sure not to touch the seal. He'd only hit it once, but he didn't have any desire to repeat that experience. Once inside the hollow, he checked his pack before covering the hole and dropping back into the frigid water below. He covered up that hole as well, then let himself be pushed along by the flow. He let himself be carried a ways downriver before he pulled himself to the banks and flopped out on a rock. He shook water out of his eyes and grinned slightly. He hated and loved these little excursions. On the one hand, he was forced to hunt for food because the village wasn't open to him shopping most of the time. He had to conserve his small stipend for things he couldn't get, like clothes and ninja gear, but they were also enjoyable on some level. He got to explore and build valuable field skills. He knew that Jonin patrolled the walls and the area outside them. He'd never been caught though. His stealth had been built up after his many flights after pranks. He had gotten to the point of being able to dodge and get away from all the Chunin and most of the Jonin and Anbu that came after him. Iruka-sensei had always managed to catch him when he was around, but Naruto suspected that had more to do with the teacher's own experience with pranking than anything else. He lay still on the rock. The sky was dark now and the stars were out. Naruto traced imaginary lines between the little lights. There was a rare moment of peace for him right now. It was quiet, only vague forest sounds to keep him company. There were no people around and the boy was able to forget about all his problems. He stayed there for nearly an hour, just watching the sky. Shikamaru was lounging in the family library. It was nearly dark outside, and the genius boy had already analyzed his scroll from earlier. It was his second project that held his attention right now. He had been flipping through the records his family kept on significant events in and around the village. 3 volumes had been discarded when nothing was found. He was unsure of what exactly he was after, just some loose ideas about finding Naruto's family name, or anything else to do with the other boy. Right now, he was reading through accounts of the 4th Hokage being put in office and a few other changes that went along with him. Still nothing on the name Uzumaki could be found. It was weird. There was no way Naruto himself was the cause of the hate. He was too young to have done anything to cause such a thing. And Shikamaru was pretty sure that this had been going on for years at this point, so, his family or some other connection had to be the key. He turned the last page and huffed in frustration. This page was unhelpful as well. Setting the thick book aside, he sat up and reluctantly went back the bookshelf closest. He pulled out the next volume and returned to his spot on the sofa. This book, written in his father's neat handwriting, followed much the same pattern as the other 4 he'd finished. He skimmed through pages about the war and some internal conflicts. A page caught his eye halfway through. The writing here was shaky, and much smaller than on the other pages. Shikamaru sat up straight. He'd never known his father to become flustered or shaken. Out of all the adult ninjas Shikamaru had observed, his father was one of the most steady and level-headed. Whatever had caused this obvious break in his character, the youth was horribly curious. Almost eagerly, he read the page. The Nine-Tails attack. Okay, so why? Oh, well, this is new. He wasn't sure what it meant, but the words were something else. Instead of dry, factual accounts of events, this appeared to be a personal entry. Today, we started clearing away the rubble and collecting the dead. Many good people have been lost, and many civilians too. Minato would be heartbroken. He and his dear, but they are both gone. My close friend and his wife both lost their lives for this village. Minato did what he always wanted to though. He, and Kushina both. His dreams of being the Hokage and protecting his precious people were realized. If only it hadn't been at such a cost. His last wish will be difficult to see realized. The child will be missing both his parents. Shikamaru almost gaped at the book. He'd never heard his dad speak about the 4th, but here it seemed like Shikaka had been very close to the man. Minato, the name was unfamiliar. He'd have to look into this. He had never heard of Kushina either. And a child was mentioned. He didn't know if it was the Hokage's child, or this Kushina person. It could be nothing, but his gut told him this could be important. He closed the book and gathered up the others to return to the shelf. He'd have to look for Naruto's family in some other way. What a drag. Why did I have to have such a high-maintenance team? Marino Ibiki wasn't the type of person who would have a nice, comfortable home to return to after hard days spent torturing people. He's the kind of man to live in a dungeon with skulls and chains decorating the place. He'd sleep in a cave-like room filled with damp and dank things, or so the majority of the village and its shinobi would tell you. In reality, his house was a small, 2-story cottage near the edge of the more quiet residential area. It had a tile roof and window boxes with herbs and flowers in them. Inside, a living area with an inviting fireplace and armchairs welcomed you. His kitchen was small, as was the dining table. Upstairs, his bedroom and 2 guest rooms occupied most of the space. The house had warm, gentle cream walls mostly. The furniture was cherry-colored wood with blue and gray upholstery. He had no signs of his work anywhere. Enko had been shocked that not even a spare kunai could be seen lying around. A few landscape paintings decorated the walls. The tall man sighed and flopped gracelessly into a recliner. He'd never forgiven Noichi and Shikaka for convincing him to take this blasted Jonin team. Ibiki was a man of duty though. He would not shirk his responsibility. He picked up a plain notebook from the small side table and flipped it to the marked page. His notes on his 3 Jonin were sparse as of yet. His personal cipher code took up less space than normal writing. Each boy had less than a page devoted to them. He started writing more details down for Shino. Focused, balanced, protective of Naruto. Could use a few more chakra building exercises and then jutsu to follow. Possible issue with narrow focus. Look into his personality more. He'd have to start pushing the team closer together. A few drills and unit exercises wouldn't go wrong at this point. It was too early to tell how well the 3 boys would bond. Ideally, the 4 of them would form a solid unit. But Ibiki could always make it a 3 against 1 just to get them to connect. Shikamaru would need some motivation for actually using his full potential, and not just barely enough to get by. Strategist would do well with information gathering and analysis. Work on speed and endurance. Talk to Shikaka and Yoshino for motivation ideas. Naruto would be the one he had to research the most. He had no family to observe, and the boy himself gave off mixed signals. There was clearly some abuse, but the extent and time span of it were unclear. He tasked 2 of his investigators, one of whom was XANB, with digging up whatever they could on him. Once he had a better idea of what the situation was, the Hokage would be hearing from him. For the time being, he would just have to focus on reassuring the boy of the team, and him particularly, being on his side. Encourage and assist, feel out more abilities as gently as possible. Appears to be a powerhouse of chakra, intuitive and able to grasp more difficult concepts easily. That thought caused a thin smile. Ibiki could still see the kid standing in the classroom at the exam, looking only mildly curious about the shadow clones. The Jonin had no idea what Hound had been thinking, showing the kid that jutsu. He closed the notebook, and then leaned back to relax. It was late, and he had to be up early. He had quite a few scrolls to prepare for their history review tomorrow. What if Shikamaru and Shino are protective of Naruto? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.